Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock. We'll start off by recognizing that we're conducting our business today primarily on the territories of the Hoop-Atchison and Deschamps First Nations, but also since our meeting is hybrid, we're meeting as well on many new channels, Coast Salish and Woongut-speaking people's lands as well, potentially. With that, because our meeting is in a hybrid format, I would say that first off, if anyone has any comments or questions for the meeting, question period is monitored either physically in the gallery or by email. So anybody who's watching online can send any questions or comments to responses@acrd.bc.ca, and we'll check that at the end of the agenda and go from there. We have quite a few people in the boardroom today, so we'll start with them and then we'll do introductions online and we'll go counterclockwise, starting with Heather. So please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Good morning, Debbie Haggard, appointed representative from the City of Port Alberni and Vice Chair of the Board.
Good morning, Akwama Penikote. I'm the Electoral Area Director for Sprout Lake, the ACRD.
Clicko, good morning. Uklama Maraikoots. I am the Executive of Lands and Resources for Fish Office of First Nation. Thank you.
And good morning. I'm Area F Director for Cherry Creek.
Good morning, Susan Ross, Director for Beaver Creek.
Good morning, Mike Hart, General Manager of Planning and Development.
Good morning, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Euclid.
Good morning, Fred Boyko, Director for Beaufort.
Good morning, Daniel Sayan, the CAO for the ACRD.
Good morning, Jenny Bratton, General Manager of Community Services with the ACRD.
Good morning, I'm Terry Fong, the Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Uklama Ukwatisaksup, Sisha Aksup, Momashni MT Cynthia Dick. I'm the new General Manager of Administrative Services.
Thank you. Welcome. My name is John Jack. I'm the representative for Hawaiian First Nations as well as the chairperson. So online, we have several directors, so I'll just call them out as I see them on my screen, maybe different for other folks. So Bob, do you want to start?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Bob Beckett, Area A, Bamfield.
And Kristen?
Morning, Kirsten Johnson, Director for the Tokwat Nation.
And Shari?
Good morning, Shari Minions, Mayor for the City of Port Alberni.
Okay, we have a few staff who are online as well. The one who's in his office is Charlie Stairs. Yeah, thanks. It's good to see you. So our agenda today is going to move us into a committee of the whole meeting that's primarily about proposed initiative cases. So with that, before we get there, we'll have an approval of the agenda. I don't think we have anything else to add to the agenda. Are there any light items as well? No? Okay, that sounds good. If we could have a motion to approve the agenda, please. Thank you, Susan, Director Roth, and Dr. Boyko. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, we have an agenda now. That moves us into minutes. We have the meeting minutes for the committee of the whole meeting for December 13th, 2023. Does anyone have any errors, omissions, corrections? None. Do we have a motion to adopt the minutes, please? Thank you, Director Roth, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 4, petitions, delegations, and presentations, of which there are none. That brings us to 5. There's no correspondence. We have requests for decisions under 6, and 6A is the beginning of proposed initiative cases. So before we go to the first one for Terry, I'm wondering if, Daniel, if you could just explain the process and what it is we're doing, just for everyone's edification. Thank you.
This year, what we have opted to do, and our finance department led the way on introducing this, is there are some aspects of the identified work that are optional. or have not yet been directed by the board at this time. And so staff have prepared these PICs, what we call them, proposed initiative cases, that provide a short overview of what the initiative would be, the risk associated with not doing it, financial impacts, the strategic alignment. And it really is just to have this discussion and see whether or not these are elements that should be advanced for consideration with the budget. Obviously, every decision made through these steps is always a tentative step until a final budget is approved, and there are a lot of moving parts. So with these initiatives, we have each appropriate department submitted these short business cases. We expect to dialogue them and have a good idea of whether or not the board would like to advance them. Some are directly relevant to express strategic plan elements. But I think it's important to remember that even though they are in the strategic plan, the strategic plan does not dictate whether we do that initiative in 2024, 2025, or 2026, or 2027. And so what we're trying to do here is really try to make sure that we're putting the right initiative in the right year, and having discussions around the risk associated with advancing or not advancing, as the case may be. Terry will likely want to add more, but hopefully I covered the right base.
I just thought it was notable because this is a new way to go about this, and I think it's really organized, and just like to voice my appreciation for it. Having said that, we haven't actually gone through the process yet, so. All right, first item is Terry, so if you want to just kick off, please go ahead.
Sure. Just in advance of that, I just wanted to state that there are some of these that are previously discussed at the board table, but staff didn't have enough information about scope or size of the project that the board was looking for. So some of these items are going to be familiar to you. Others are not going to be familiar for sure. And then that there's many of them I have tried to indicate whether they would be requisition funded or grant funded or using reserve funds. And so one of the options to consider as we go through are the ones that are requisition funded. We could make contingent on grant funding, which would basically state if we are unable to secure some grant funding, the project would not proceed. So it would just kind of be in the holding zone, I guess, on our project listing. So that's another item to consider. And also, if you approve for inclusion in the financial plan, that does not mean the discussion is over and this initiative is fully done. It just means you want to see it with all the other components of the financial plan, which we will be discussing at length at the February 14th Committee of the Whole meeting. So this is just do you want this extra thing added into the draft plan? So I will kick off with the capital project manager if that works. So the capital project manager, as outlined, will oversee a number of capital projects. We have quite a few of them that are coming up, and they are grant funded or hoping to be grant funded. And so this person would kind of oversee the construction aspect, from engineering to oversight over the successful construction company all the way to the end where it's ready to be implemented. So happy to answer any questions on this one.
Dr. Roth, please go ahead.
So does that mean that each, say the Banfield and the Sprout Lake Fire Hall, does that mean a portion of the grants would go towards the capital project manager? Is that how we're looking at it?
Yes. So whatever projects that they're working on, it would go to that. These ones at this point are grant funded. The airport maintenance, Alberni Valley Regional Airport Maintenance Building is the one that we don't know if it's going to be grant funded at this time, but it would support getting those projects going. Yeah.
Dr. Boyko?
Thank you. So this is adding a full-time employee, and this position may have the potential for being grant funded now, but what's going to happen next year? Is it going to be fully funded by this ACRD after that? What's the plan moving forward? Thank you.
So the collective agreement gives us the ability to hire term employees that are going to be grant funded. So it would end up being, we know these projects are going to take us at least a year to complete. So we would do it as a term position and link the position to grant funding. we would not be able to proceed with making that a full-time employee without consulting the board again, as well as the union, because the LOU, I think it is, it's attached to the agreement, specifically states that when they are fully grant funded, that these can be temporary style positions. That would be our intent. We also don't know if this would be an employee or a contractor. It's we're not really sure what the market looks like for either. We know that this is like a full-time workload that we are anticipating, but whether we have a preference over contractor employee, we need the dedicated resources and not someone trying to do it off the side of their desk is where we're feeling like we can get more success on these things and more cost efficiencies.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My main concern is we're adding another employee through a grant or a temporary position that eventually we're going to have this discussion a year from now. Let's make this a permanent position. We're going to keep increasing. Thank you.
Daniel, go ahead.
I think it's a valid concern always as we add to our capacity. I think the important thing to remember is that in the creation of all of these business cases, these PICs, what we're aiming to do is making sure that we're having these conversations, both in terms of term and if there was a permanent element, we would certainly be bringing that forward as a different approach. And this year we don't have that coming forward. These are all term and connected to grants. And I just want to flag the challenge we have. It's maybe a good problem, is that there's a number of different things that have come up in the last few months where the province is providing grant funding. You'll see on the next one as well. And having the money is one thing, but having the capacity to actually do the work properly is another. And what we don't want to do is expand our organization in a way that doesn't meet our core business. And so if we were to come back and talk about a permanent expansion, we'd want to be talking about what is core to our organization as well. And in reviewing all of these PICs, where we're recommending term employees, it's because we're not convinced at this time that this is actually part of our core activities moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks for the explanation as well, Daniel. I think one of the concerns that we all have here is after the large expansion last year of adding 12, 13 employees, how much bigger are we expecting the ACRD to get over time? Because there is a limit to what the public can pay for. Thank you.
Good comment, good question as well. Any expansion that we do is going to be tied to the services that we provide. And what is important to remember, and I think something that was missed with the last review that I think was in 2017, is when we did a service review and recommended some growth of staff, what was missed is the impact of growing various departments on support departments. So last year, what we saw was us playing catch up on the fact that we had not adjusted our corporate or finance, and that both of these departments play a key role in actually supporting the activities of departments. And so back to that argument, it's like we're not growing in the absence of a growth in a service. And when we talk about services, we want to make sure that as staff, that we're flagging those impacts on staff levels, because it's important for the board to know when we're putting our feet in areas that are going to have impacts on our core organization structure. But I think what this board has made very clear in approving what has occurred last year is that they weren't looking to expand beyond where we are. And staff, I think, were very sensitive to that, while also being sensitive to these various legislative changes and various grants that are coming across our desk. And that's why we're focusing on grant, term, contract, or employee, get the job done, and then complete the contract and move on.
Dr. Cote.
Thank you. So my question would be through the chair to staff, what would happen if we don't hire this person? Who would be taking on the work? Thanks.
So if we don't hire somebody, what we're going to need to do is just revisit the existing priorities that we have within the capacities of staff. So we do have some certified project managers on staff. Their focus is largely in community services and largely in the landfill and solid waste area. and water are two big key areas, and their plates are full. And so if we don't, what we would likely be looking at is a timeline adjust for some of these projects, recommending that perhaps we push them back if permissible, depending on grants. If the grants don't allow those specific projects to be pushed back, then we would come back to the board and propose other projects be pushed back that can be. But what we want to make sure is that we're not over-promising and under-delivering. A lot of these projects require either coordination of multiple agencies or outreach with the public, and neither of those initiatives can be cut short. We've seen that if public engagement doesn't quite go as we want, we end up really, in effect, resetting. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the right time on that. And with the market the way it is on capital projects, we see a lot of twists and turns and changes. And the West Coast landfill is a great example that as concrete, labor, and steel prices went through the roof, we were adjusting within existing budgets. And it really was all hands on deck to be able to, in essence, redefine a project so that we could actually still deliver something to the public within the budget that we have. So anticipating this sometimes happens, having the skill set dedicated towards these capital projects would be helpful. Two of the key projects are fire. And we just know that when you're pulled towards emergencies and 30 people, we do have our paid fire chiefs. Complementing that with some project management skills, we feel is going to drastically reduce the risk of project overruns or missed timelines.
So for this one, I'd like to actually park it for now and see where we are closer to the end if we can actually afford this. Thanks.
Thanks. That might be a practice that we do as we go through each of these, and then we'll return back to the actual motions. That might be the way that we get through this quicker. I don't know. Is that all right? Yeah. Okay. So that brings us to the next item then, unless there are any other comments or questions on the project manager. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next one. That's pick 2, regional mapping for next gen 911 transition. Daniel, please go ahead.
Thank you. So on the next gen 911, we are supposed to have a contract in place with TELUS by 2025 for federal legislation. And in order to help us with that, the UBCM issued a number of $45,000 grants, specifically to ensure that we were doing the GIS work around addressing. We received the grant early last year, but unfortunately, the way the grant came through in March of last year was that treaty nations, local governments, but not the non-treaty nations, all received $45,000 and all received a bit of a nebulous sort of statement around this is why you received it, even though you didn't apply. It took the better part of the year to have the discussions with various agencies to see who's going to use the funds for what. But the biggest legal liability is on the GIS and mapping. And if we fail to do that, the way the contract is structured is, the regional district would likely be left holding the bag of liability or in a position of conflict with particularly the nations, which really does not create a good scenario. The amount of work that is required is in the neighborhood of 146 weeks as calculated by our GIS. And we believe that by pulling all the grants, $45,000 grants together, we would be able to hire the appropriate skills to do the work this year. We have also created a draft agreement that's going to be shared with the overall, with the region, with the local governments and the treaty and non-treaty nations to explain how the work would be done and whether or not everyone can make the written commitment towards having the ACRD coordinate that work. But ultimately, this is has been extremely complex to try and, in essence, pull everyone together. It would have been a lot easier, I think, if it was a singular grant, but it was didn't land that way. So what we're looking to do on this one is to hire somebody on contract work under GIS to actually do this work. Just in general, there's an element of public engagement. There's a coordination with agencies such as forestry Flinro, the individual private companies that might have the different properties involved, coordination with all of the nations. There is a coordination with fire departments. There is site verification and address data that has to be updated. And we also have to create a long-standing process for how new addresses are added and updated onto the system through North Island 911. So it is quite a bit of work that stretches beyond the one employee that we have.
So just to start off questions on this one, it seems like quite a bit of work. Is this an instance where you'd be looking at an RFP process to figure out for like a full meal deal suite of services, or is this, you know, a nerd behind a desk? Like it's somewhere in between.
We call them, yeah. We would put out an RFP for the full suite, and this is why staff have prepared the detailed list of the work to be done. On February 8th, I'll be meeting with my counterparts at our regional CAO and executive director meeting to share this and request that they bring this back to their appropriate boards and councils to make sure that there's support. But ultimately, we can't coordinate or complete this work with 45,000. It really is going to require that everyone who received, or at least most of the people who received, can help make this contract closer to $150,000 contract to get the work done.
All right, thank you. My mother was a GIS tech before she passed away, so yeah. So with that, are there any other comments or questions on this? Go ahead, Director Haggard.
I'd like to make the motion, please, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 02, regional mapping for next generation 911 transition in the 2024 to 2028 draft ACRD financial plan.
Are you seconding, Bob, or do you have a question? You're seconding? Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Thank you. Director Cote?
Thank you. Just that the 911 has been problematic in the past, trying to find location of addresses. So this is a really good initiative. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Blicko?
I didn't really have a comment there, but I do agree with what Director Cote just said. If you try and Google that my address, you go down the really wrong place. People rely too much on incorrect information.
All right, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, the next item is PIC 03, General Government and Cybersecurity. Heather, please go ahead.
Thank you. So this PIC is to consider budgeting to utilize an external cybersecurity firm to conduct regular cybersecurity assessments for the regional district. This is to protect the regional district against a wide range of cyber attacks. We rely heavily on computer systems to deliver the majority of our services, and we would be negatively impacted if the regional district was hit by a cyber attack. Funding for this first year of the program is approximately $20,000 to $30,000 and would be allocated from general government. However, it's anticipated that these assessments could lead to further costs down the line for new hardware or software or staff training. Municipalities are very at risk because of the amount of personal data we hold, which is a prime motivator for attackers. Because we need to continue to provide our services even if we are under attack, which makes municipalities a target to request money from. At the regional district, we've seen an increase in phishing and spear phishing emails in recent months. Should the ACRD be attacked, there'd be significant financial costs, plus staff time and resources dedicated to addressing the attack. Plus, there would be significant time where service delivery would be impacted. The alternative to hiring an external contractor would be to hire another qualified staff person to manage this program, but that would be very expensive, and we're not recommending that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. What are we currently doing now for the cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is not a new thing. Municipalities have been attacked for at least a decade. This is not something new. What are we currently doing? Thank you.
I can't speak to that in detail. I can only speak to what I do, and as an employee, I'm trained to spot these things. But maybe Daniel, you could expand on and what our IT department does.
We have a number of firewalls in place. We all go through training and certification to make sure that we identify what's going on. In essence, there is a specific list of things that are required in order for our insurance to cover, and we go through those. The challenge that we have is that our insurance companies are giving indication that that may not be something they continue doing in terms of coverage, because it is too expensive and there's too much involved in it. And what we're seeing is a growing number of different style of attacks. And so our existing infrastructure works up to a certain point where we can actually see the attacks. But what's challenging is that our two-person staff there is really on a 24/7, 365 rotation of paying attention, where if you get a notice of a firewall being breached, you have to assess the situation and take action. In some cases, we have literally unplugged our servers for a period of time in order to reboot them. Sometimes that's during the day. So we do have systems right now that help us. The biggest challenge is staying up to date and the 24/7, 365. And by going to a contract, we can actually share that amongst other people that are getting similar service. There are other details nuanced to our system that we could go into, but I'd rather go on camera because I don't want to provide opportunities.
Any further comments? Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. For the board's information, I sit on the executive board for the Municipal Insurance Association. I know that they do webinars, et cetera, lunch and learns, and whatever information. They have a convention annually that we have sent employees to. We can use our points to pay for that we accumulate from MIA. So it shouldn't cost us much at all to send someone. Cyber security is one of our top discussed issues that keeps getting worse and worse. I'm sure that staff are following what MIA is proposing and the education that they're providing. Cyber security, I'm sure that they have given us suggestions as to how we can protect ourselves. I'm not sure if it's because of my position with UBCM or AVICC or just this board, but I have emails daily, multiple emails, which I have shared with the regional district with our staff. So it is a problem. And I've also been breached through MIA. So it's an interesting area that we do need to protect ourselves. Thanks.
Any further comments or questions? Director Roth.
Yeah, myself to the ACRD email, I get, unwanted or phishing emails, but I noticed at my workplace, it never happens. So maybe there is a better way of doing it.
Governments in general are a much larger and common target. So hackers will tend to go to where deeper pockets exist. And the legislation around the protection of personal information is unfortunately extremely valuable, and the stakes are high. So government and local governments are much larger targets than not-for-profits or other smaller businesses. And this is why you see literally there will be the speed with which hacking occurs live is it's automated. It's so fast that it's, like what people are doing is you get servers from other countries. And quite literally what we can do is we can block, say, servers coming in from parts of Europe and parts of China. And literally as we see that it continues, they're simply jumping around and continuing the process. And we're simply following and blocking or shutting down to the point, as I said, where when we get to United States or Canada, at that point, then we tend to shut down our servers, give them a rest. Usually our IT will send out a notice saying, hey, folks, sorry, we're going to be shutting down for the next X amount of time, and then off we go. So yeah, just, and it's unfortunately not uncommon, which is why so many local governments are talking about it, they're popular targets.
Yeah, just to corroborate that, my experiences have been through Kuwait. We get mostly Russian and Pakistan and China in that order, trying things with us, because our IT guy can track that. So we have a dedicated guy for that, and it's mostly cybersecurity and then hardware stuff on the side. And then in my VIU experience, I'm on the board of governors there. The president of VIU came from the University of Guelph, and they got owned. All their personal information, their servers got hacked, and it was really not good. So I think in the public sector, there is a focus and targeting on that, but to what degree it is, I couldn't compare. Kuwait's comparatively small, and we still get probably weekly instances where we just shut the server down to avoid the DDoS attacks. But I think it's one of those things where they just see an opportunity and take it, but then they'll move on once the server goes offline. So I don't know. I think this is something that would be valuable to do, but I haven't gone into too much detail beyond just what it costs. Director Boyko?
Thank you, Chair. Are we listening to what other IT departments and other AC or regional districts and other places are doing, so they're not reinventing the wheel on every municipality in BC and trying to figure things out individually as opposed to coming together as a group to find, cost savings and not learn the same thing 100 different ways? Thank you.
Yes, we are, and there's a lot of dialogue around the approach. You can either, a lot of agencies have opted to go on, move everything onto the cloud, with regular backups and whatnot taking place on the cloud, the challenge with that, of course, is cost as well. You start moving everything, and you're paying somebody else for that space and security. We have opted to keep things in house with backups here. The volume is large. But that approach has been a lower cost, but it means that our existing staff are the ones that are monitoring. That's one of the key differences that we have had. And if we move to the cloud, that would be a different animal that we would present to the board, because that would represent an increase in cost and would be a different approach for us. So right now, what we're looking to do is really just beef up and continue along the path that we have. But in terms of volumes, like just our planning department, backup will be in the neighborhood of 23 terabytes. And so if you're looking at, and that's because of all the mapping data and whatnot. And so if you don't successfully back that up and there is an attack, you're losing that information for whatever window of time. And so the impact is not only the ransom that you pay to release the information, but it's the lost staff productivity, it's the lost input and whatever was put in during that window of time, and then also the legal ramifications if you've lost people's personal information. And we've seen the court cases around that. I think everyone's received Life Lab things and whatnot, where there's class action suits, and our insurance would help on that, but it is what you don't recover from is the lost staff time that is lost and people have to start over, and all the files that the public are waiting for answers on that get further delayed, and we've already had discussions around that as well. So this one is, it's what we're really aiming to do is continue down what we feel is the most cost-effective approach for now. At some point, will we end up having to be on the cloud? Probably, but that will be a completely different proposition that we bring forward to the board, a completely different budget at that time.
Director Cote and then Director Sparrow.
Thank you. Just wondering what the difference in cost is and what the benefits would be to moving to the cloud. Thanks.
That is an excellent question, one that I dare not answer without some written information behind me. So we would have to come back for that. I know that our IT department would be able, they're running comparisons, so we could get a bit of an idea. I'm not sure how quickly, but I'd rather have a report that we run through for that comparison.
Could we get one of that report then in the, I'm not saying tomorrow or anything like that, but I'd really like to see that. Thanks.
We will take a look at that and get an estimate. Yes. Hopefully it's quick. I don't want to put our staff on the spot, but I do know that I just recently had this conversation late last week with our IT manager.
Further, just wondering what the benefits would be to moving to the cloud if we wouldn't need another level of security here, if they take care of it. So it might be built in.
We can, we'll come back and answer that question.
Dr. Sparrow, go ahead.
Thank you for that. So there have been instances in the Valley where companies have been attacked and shut down from ransomware, and that's been costly. And we're doing a great job with the two people we have right now, like you said. But if we go to a contract cybersecurity firm, couple of things. Would it be a recognized cybersecurity firm? And if it was so, would our insurance recognize that and help us on the insurance side? Because right now we're relying on two people. If we went to a bigger or larger company, would that affect our insurance rates getting lower?
Yes, on both fronts. And really what we're talking about is just maintaining the existing levels in terms of insurance and whatnot, right? So as the request for increase levels is made through insurance, we have to keep up with that. And so in a lot of cases, we're at the beck and call of other industries, and it can be frustrating because we find ourselves in this conversation in a number of different areas. As we know, with new legislation, we're sort of in a position of saying we have to keep up and up the bar, up the ante, and the same thing goes with cybersecurity. We have to up the bar and the ante. Yes, on both fronts. I don't think it's a savings in terms of insurance. I think it's more of a switch of you get it or you don't get it. Unless I missed something, I
was just going to add that the insurance is a little bit of a moving target because they're kind of moving in and out, and MIA is having to react and change how they provide options for us for security. So there is definitely a large list of demands or requirements that come every year with the new checklist, and we're trying our best to meet those, but they're struggling. So having that outside expertise to guide and assist as things are changing rapidly in the world of cybersecurity would help our staff know where to focus the time and effort, for sure.
Dr. Cote.
Thank you. So knowing what MIA is facing, we reinsure, and our reinsurers, some of them have dropped the cybersecurity altogether. We've been able to secure a reinsurer for cybersecurity at a higher rate. A lot of them have gone up, but we've secured because of our reputation, we've secured a lower rate for members. So thanks.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Dr. McEwen.
Thank you. I get phishing emails quite regularly from the ACRD, or they appear to come from Chair Jack, actually. But luckily, our IT person at Equalit gave us all a phishing workshop, so we know what to look for, and that's really helpful. I think this is a really important item. So, thanks.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Dr. Roth, go ahead.
I was just going to make the motion.
All right. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Let's see here. Any further comments? Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to park this also with looking at what moving to the cloud, if that would provide what we're looking for as far as and that extra layer before we move on to this. Thank you.
I guess if the motion's already on the floor, you would have to have a motion to table it or amend it. You could amend it to investigate both, or and then come back with a report on it.
Second motion.
Yeah. So to,
To wait for a report and, bring it back.
okay. Is anyone seeing that as an option? Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. We're making assumptions about this is the only path forward, and it would be good to see what other paths, including the cloud option, are available. And then if we can get that data within a day or two, I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, so that's been seconded. Do we have any other comments? Dr. Roth?
Can I withdraw my motion?
It's just easier to do this now that we're already there. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, the amending motion? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, can we do this again? All those in favor? Okay, 1, 2, 3. All opposed? 1, 2, 3. And Kirsten, did you vote? I didn't see you.
Yes, in favor.
In favor? Okay. So with that, I'll declare the motion carried. Okay, so with that in mind, that'll what I'll do is I'll just move that forward. Thank you. Okay, so we will come back to that with a greater investigation of our options. That brings us to item 4, general government portable IT equipment for remote hybrid meetings. Heather, go ahead.
Thank you. So this PIC is related to the purchase of portable IT equipment to facilitate hybrid meetings, including the ability to live stream offsite in other areas of the region. This info is provided at the request of the board from May 10th, 2023. The purchase of this equipment includes hardware and software, which would allow ACRD staff to conduct public hearings or meetings at an offsite location, such as one of our rural community halls. This supports the strategic plan and optimizing communication platforms and practices. The cost is estimated between $12,000 and $15,000 and would be funded through general government. Our IT department would require time to purchase the equipment, set up, and train staff to utilize the equipment. And the alternative is to delay the purchase or not purchase. Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Director Cote, then Director Sparrow.
Thank you. For this portable equipment, do you have to have internet access then at the location?
I do not know that answer. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So for Sprout Lake, we don't have a place. Our hall, community hall, does not have Wi-Fi, does not have any access, no telephone lines, no cable at all. So this would be useless to bring me to my area. Thank you.
Seems like the community center might need internet. I have Dr. Sparrow and then Dr. Beckett and then Dr. Boyko.
Oh, thank you for that. This sort of came out of a couple of things. For Cherry Creek, one thing was they wanted to get their APC meetings and their other meetings back into their community hall and get a community involvement in their hall. And the second thing was we might have exceeded the capacity here when we had it here because this hall or area is not designed to carry the weight of Cherry Creek's involvement. So this is where part of where it came out of. I think it'll be helpful to Bamfield and also to Long Beach because they're doing some APC work. They have to come here via hybrid format. If they don't have internet, they can go there and they can get it work there. So it does work beneficially. It also has the added advantage of if we couldn't meet here for whatever reason, we have an off-site. This place became unavailable to us. We have an off-site. We can actually open the meeting somewhere else. So it's also part of emergency preparedness too, if we look at that one. I mean, I'm correct.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Beckett and then Dr. Boyko. Am I missing anyone? Back to Dr. Cote after Boyko and then Dr. Haggard.
Thank you, Chair Jack. Director Sparrow made a number of comments that I could mirror. I am completely in support of this. Given the remoteness of our community of Bamfield and the number of seasonal folks that are not necessarily there throughout a good portion of the year, So while I'm sure there's going to be additional comments, I am prepared to make the motion to move this forward at this point in time. Thank you.
All right, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Okay, we'll continue with the speaking list, even though we do have a motion now. So that brings us to Director Boyko and then Director Cote.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My point is, if someone is going to use this equipment or watch everything, they already have internet access, or else it's null and void. You cannot use it, you can't watch it, you can't do anything. So we had an instance last year where this place was overloaded. Will that continue? I don't know. Perhaps a different format is going to be proposed in the future here, but my question is, how useful will this be if we have already live streamed our comments, like this meeting right now is being live streamed, and you can watch it somewhere else? If we have a remote facility and you can live stream from there, how is that any different than what you're doing right now? Because everybody that would potentially watch it has internet access, or else there's this whole thing is null and void. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Cote and then Director.
Thank you. I had a conversation with Wendy Thompson in the past regarding the overcapacity here, and said, you know, what is our solution? And she mentioned the church across the road, and that if there could be, across the road for overcapacity, and utilizing that, if this equipment would be able to be utilized there. And I definitely see the need for it in a place like Banfield, and other locations where we used to have meetings in all communities, try to every year go to another community. I'm not sure what Tofino and Ucluelet have in place for video and this type of equipment, but if we could use it across the road for overcapacity, I think that would be a benefit to us. There is other things that, besides going it to a community hall, reasons for it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That brings us to Director Haggard. Now I'll comment.
Thank you. I think Cherry Creek Community Hall does not have internet access as well, and then, unless they've just hooked it up recently.
Okay, so I have a comment on this because when I picture this portable IT equipment for remote hybrid meetings, I picture the types of devices that were borrowed from the Ucluelet Community Center for Monos First Nations meetings with the senior ministers in the provincial government. And so they set up in a hotel room, and they had this kind of arrangement for all the ministers and chiefs to sit around. And they had two column-looking devices that could track who was speaking. Yeah, like they look like owls. Yeah. And so I assume it could be something like that as well, which over and above the capacity issues for this, having extra cameras for meetings of committees and this board in other locations would provide some, I think, redundancy, but also some capacity to go back to having meetings on the West Coast or in Banfield for all of us together. And for people who can't make it can still come in and connect in that way. I think there would be utility in that. So I think that this would be worth doing, especially if it's something that is flexible, like an OWL system as well. Even one would provide more opportunity for us to do things like that as well. So the next up is there anybody else who wants to speak? Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just looked at the price of an owl. They're $1,500. So how do we go from 50? I don't think the software is going to cost $13,000. Can we go with a more budget-friendly solution and drop our price 20% of what's predicted and make that happen? I'm just saying there are cheaper alternatives.
Yeah. So what we can do is we can park this and come back to it as well in context. So I don't think we need a motion to park it, but we can just come back. I still think it's important to have something to this effect. I just don't know the other context.
So there was a motion moved and seconded, so you would need a motion to table this to.
Oh, sorry, I didn't write that down. My apologies to those who moved and seconded. Okay, with that, are there any comments or questions on the motion? I think just to do it. Was there one? I didn't write down that.
Yeah, Bob Beckett moved.
Oh, yes, it was. Yeah. Okay, with that, any further comments? See. So yeah, it would have to be a motion to.
So I'll put forward a motion that I would like to examine a much more, I see the value of this, especially for some of the remote communities and when we have overcapacity issues of whatever kind. I think we can do it for much cheaper. I'd like to table it and make a motion to table this and examine much more budget-friendly solutions, because I think we can do this for $2,000, including software. Training someone, a director, to do this, so we don't need staff members in place, is going to be extremely simple. Carry on. Thank you.
All right, is there a seconder for that? Dr. Ross and Dr. Coche? Any further comments? Dr. Sparrow, go ahead.
Are we tabling this or are we parking this? Isn't tabling for a certain set time as opposed to parking?
It could be either. If something is tabled, usually you can define either the next instance that it would come up, could be the next meeting, or it could be just at the end of this, like we go through. So it can have the same effect depending on the context and information. So that would have to be defined in the motion specifically. And if it's not, then we can always have a motion to bring it back to this agenda as well. Dr. Beckett, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate the alternate motion by Director Boyko. I'm just looking for clarification with respect to the specifics of the motion, because while I could support referring this back to staff, I don't entirely agree with everything Director Boyko mentioned, including having the directors trained to use this equipment remotely. I just found out there's a camera on my cell phone. I say that a little bit of tongue in cheek, but I just want to be careful where we're going with this. If it's referred back regarding a budgetary aspect, I'm happy to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you, Director Beckett. I can appreciate what you're going through there. My comment would be, let's park this for now, to use the proper terminology, have staff come back with a more budget-friendly solution, do some initial training with directors that feel comfortable doing it themselves. If directors do not feel comfortable doing it themselves, then we can have staff, if it comes down to, have staff attend their meetings to help them out, or whatever it is, or do some remote help to get things set up so all the director has to do is hit a button. Whatever it is. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, with that, any further comments? Dr. Sparrow, go ahead.
Thank you. If we're going to do a hybrid meeting for like APC and like that, there'll be staff on scene anyway. So why are we training director to do something staff's going to be there to do to organize the meeting anyway?
I think that's just an option. I think it's the flexibilities. Yeah. So with that, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. So this is or tables, sorry. All right. All right, that brings us to item 5, which is the general government exempt compensation market test. Go ahead.
So the ACRD exempt compensation policy states that the board will engage a compensation consultant once per electoral term to do a market test on exempt wages. So we did the last one in 2019. So the concept from staff would be that maybe we do this in late fall 2024 to bring back some results for the financial planning discussions for 2025. Yeah, I think it was about 12 grand last time we did it. we don't necessarily anticipate it being too much more than that.
All right, thank you. It seems like we want to do it not too close to an election and not too soon after an election, because that's where it seems like there's a lot of staff turnover and therefore kind of temporary increase in wages. So doing it in between that would be good. No, it does bump up. We tried to find staff at Houillet right after the election, and it was a bloodbath. So, did anyone have any comments, questions, Dr. Boydro?
Okay, so I'm just gonna make a comment here that applies to most of the rest of the items going forward here. Whenever we talk about increasing cost for your staff or anything like that, we have to remember that we're not always the most representative group of what's actually out there. I say this for a specific reason. Interest rates remain at a 20-year high right now. Inflation's persistently above 3%. Mortgage rental rates are the highest. Most of the people in this room are not in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that are massively affected by these high interest rates. The vast majority of the valley are getting by barely. They don't have multiple vehicles, boats, homes, houses, boats, Teslas, etc. Just remember, everybody to remember these facts moving forward. As of today, they held interest rates this morning, but is that going to stay? I don't know. Posted in mortgage rates are 7 to 8% right now. People are falling behind. The dream of home ownership is falling behind in the valley here. One statistic I'm just going to say is Port Alberni has the highest child poverty rate in BC. This is not a statistic to be proud of. Anytime we raise costs, this is going to increase that number. So I just want everybody to keep that in mind moving forward. Thank you. That being said, should we do the exempt market research now or postpone it? I know how much cost went up last time this went forward, and it was not a small amount. So we need to remember that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was 2019 though, so that was why I was making comments around the election. Dr. Roth, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that, Director Boyko. I was looking at the Alberni Valley Vital Signs report in 2023, and with the mindset that we really do have to consider taxpayers' ability to pay. And on page 20 of the report, it talks about income sources for the population aged 15 years and older. And in the Alberni Valley, for market income, only 53.7% income comes from employment. So that's, only 1 out of every 2 people are working. Investment income was 3.9%. Retirement income was 11.5%. Government transfers like old age security, income assistance, Canada Pension Plan, employment insurance, it's all in there. So we really do have to consider that a lot of people, especially people on government transfers, don't have the ability because they're on fixed incomes, and same with the private retirement income. Thanks.
Thanks. A fixed income isn't a low income though necessarily. Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. There's all kinds of issues that we've all been watching, from COVID to strikes, to ferry, to the fire. Our economic environment has been hit. Our industry has been hit. Everybody has been hit. But keeping that also in mind, this organization will be hampered very much if we start losing our employees. We do need to do this market test at some point, and like was pointed out, right by an election is not the right time to do it. So we have contracts in place. I'm not sure when our next contract is up. That so I'm not sure how that would affect our employees' compensation, but I would like to know where we stand before. It doesn't mean that we're going to have to increase anybody's pay. It's just looking at where we sit in the market, because I've been on this board for a long time and seen vacant positions, and it has hurt this organization in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cote. I asked a question of Daniel on this while you're speaking. So this has to do with potentially losing exempt staff, because that's what we're talking about. So in terms of exempt staff, are they all on the same timelines for their employment agreements, or are they different?
So every exempt employee has their own contract, and we don't have a unifying playbook or anything that would indicate, what brings those contracts together. So we have standard templates. We try and keep things legally up to date, and we follow our policies. And so where there, I'm not aware of a term contract is what I'm saying. So anyone who signed on is signed on in permanence. And so what we do is follow the existing policies, which includes there's grids that are linked to performance. And this policy is simply one of doing the regular market check-in. So what staff are aiming to do here is to make sure that the board is aware of the policy. And the question is, when within your term do you want to roll forward with this?
Thank you for that. Director Haggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the Director Cote. We have excellent staff at this organization, and we need to pay them accordingly to what the marketplace is paying their employees. If you don't pay them accordingly, they'll leave, because how municipal governments and local governments get employees is poaching from other areas. So it's very easy to lose our good employees to other areas if you don't pay them to whatever the marketplace is. Thanks.
Yeah, we did that to the city, so I guess that's why you're bringing it up. Director Roth, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to delay it till 2025.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Director Boyko, thank you. Any further comments? Does anyone know off the top of their head when the next election year is?
2.5 years from now, 2026.
Okay, so not terrible. If we do it early in 2025, yeah, okay. If we do it early, guys. Okay, somebody quote me on that later. Okay, yeah. Not many people check the video that often now. Go ahead.
So just as a point of note there, how we're going to say it, not many people watch the Zoom videos, but if you go on the YouTube channel and look at the committee meetings or board meetings in the past 6 months, you'll see a rapid increase of people watching on YouTube. So it's much easier to watch at their own leisure in the future. For most people, we're in the middle of the day. Most people have jobs that are working right now, that are paying our salaries, right? So I urge people to go look at how many people are watching on YouTube, especially some of the controversial ones in the last 6 months. You'll see over 100 views on all those. They're not watching right now, but they're watching time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, any further comments? I see, Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd just like to send some kudos to the staff. I did see an email or Facebook that directed people to watch the meeting today. So, yeah, that it's available.
Oh, hey, yeah, use the video. Oh, yeah, use the YouTube link. Not the Zoom. Thank you. Okay, any further comments? Last chance. Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, what is the motion to delay this till 2025?
Yeah, that is the motion. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 6, PSC General Government Director's Benefits. Cynthia, go ahead.
Thank you. So direction was given to ACRD staff to investigate what the cost would be for ACRD to pay for the benefits coverage for elected officials. So under the current bylaw, directors are eligible for medical, extended health, dental, and group life insurance benefits for themselves and their dependents on the same basis that the regional district provides those benefits to its employees, provided that all costs of those benefits are paid in full by the director. So we did look into what the cost would be, and there is a breakdown on page 2 of the PIC provided, and that is broken down monthly per director, annually, and then annually for all our group working. So one of the things that I wanted to note was this is just for extended health and dental. So we did reach out to our group plan administrator regarding the insurance coverage, and that one, it may not be relevant at this time because that is based on the annual income of, it would be based on the annual income of each director that is provided by ACRD. So for this one, the staff is looking for direction on how to proceed with this, as it was just, the direction was to investigate it. And then it also noted that the next independent review of directors' remuneration expenses and benefits is to be scheduled for 2026.
I had a comment and a question, and then we'll go to the rest of the speakers. So my comment is what we could do, and I like this information, I think it's good. What we could do is do a check for municipal and First Nations members. Like I already have benefits through POET, so I wouldn't have to opt into this to save money for the regional district. And we can make that a policy as well. My other question is there's quite a range in the cost annually. Is that just like your standard insurance if you're older and you smoke kind of thing?
No, so the breakdown in cost is based on single, couple, or family. So that's the breakdown of the cost.
All right, thank you. Comments? Sorry, Dr. Sparrow, then Dr. Haggard, go ahead.
Thank you for that. I think this came out of partially we were trying to figure out some benefits moving forward for the directors here to try and get other people interested besides people that have time in the day, right? And this is one of the things we brought up. So it says 14 directors, and there are 14 directors, but I was going to point out there are 6 people that are EA directors that only have this board as their benefit package availability, whereas all the rest have a secondary source through their community. So point of being rude is maybe we should look at what they can do on their side, and we just concentrate on the 6 directors here that have no other backup benefits. There's one way of looking at it. I know it's not the right thing to do, because some people do have backup benefits elsewhere. And to put the cost at $67,000, 14 directors for the whole thing, I think the idea was to try and find a way we can get younger people involved in this through some benefits. And if we're going to do it that way, then why can't we just put in a health and benefit package for a set amount and then let the directors decide how that works for them? And we can put in medical, we can put in dental, we can put in healthcare, we can put in childcare for people who want to come in here and have it as slush fund to make this more available to them at that cost.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Sparrow. I have Dr. Haggard and then Roth. Am I missing anybody? Dr. Cote, Director Boykoff.
Thank you. My preference would be to delay this until the review for the total compensation package is done for the directors, so it can be done in tandem with salaries as well at the same time. However, I have benefits through the city, so I shouldn't be speaking on behalf of the other directors that don't have any benefits.
Yeah, I think that's important. Director Roth and then Dr. Cote.
I too have benefits through my workplace, so I wouldn't take advantage of this, but it makes me feel like we're not employees, we're elected officials, our job is to represent people's best interests. So it kind of crosses over a line in my mind. I feel like it, I don't know, it just feels like it shouldn't be part of being an elected official. Thank you.
I can appreciate that. Being an elected official is not a sacrifice you're supposed to make, it's a job, right? It's work, and you all get underpaid. Everybody in local government, directors, city councilors, even mayors get underpaid. Like it's total crap compared to what other things, like the types of work that you have to do. And I know that that's a political statement, but I've seen the work that happens. So I think having the benefits in place would be really valuable to get more people involved. And I think that speaks to what Director Sparrow was saying. I have Director Cote and then Boyko, and then I'll put you back on. Thanks.
Thank you. For all the years that I've been a director, this is my 6th term, and I have never been compensated for a lot of things that I've asked for. The wage that the compensation that directors get is not does not compensate well. It's like working for $5 for the last 20 years almost an hour. So this would be a true benefit. I know that the city of Port Alberni has compensation for extended health and dental. I would imagine that most of our First Nations and the other incorporated areas have compensation. Rural areas especially are taken advantage of, in my opinion. So this would be definitely a benefit. Like I said, I've been paying my own for many years, which definitely takes away from any compensation that I have been getting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have Dr. Boyko, then Ross, and I've put on Minions as well.
Yes, thank you. We have to be careful voting in something that essentially is a pay raise for some people and some people not. So be careful how we're looking at this. This is brought up as to try and get more people, especially younger people, into board seats, which I highly recommend that we have. One of the other things that we should do is do this in the evening so that people that have regular jobs can actually show up and do it. And I could be here more frequently on a regular basis. So that's something we should also look at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have Dr. Ross and then Dr. Minions. Yeah, okay. Dr. Minions?
Thank you. I was just going to note that just for comparison, at the city, we do have benefits. However, the only cost that is covered is our personal benefits. If we want benefits for our spouses or families, we cover 100% of the cost of that, which is not really common to structure it in that way. And certainly it's not how it's structured for our employees. I just want to offer full support to offering the option of benefits to directors. I think that it's something that's important and certainly could open things up for as an initial draw for more people putting their names forward, but I also just think it's something that people should absolutely have access to. And I just wanted to share that from the city, though, because it is, if we're comparing, what people get in different places. For instance, we may see people at the city opt to take regional district benefits if the cost is covered to a higher capacity at the regional district than the city, and might be something for the city to review as well, just to keep as much in line as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Dr. Haggard had the notion of maybe waiting for the conversation to be linked to overall benefits conversations, as well, not benefits, sorry, overall remuneration conversations. So would you like to make that a motion?
I'll make that a motion.
Okay, any seconders? Dr. Roth, thank you. Dr. Cote, go ahead.
So would this be in 2026 then?
We haven't actually talked about how compensation and remuneration would be discussed. My sense is that the way that it has been done by the regional district in the past and the city in the past has been you have a working group put together to make recommendations that would take effect after the next election, so that it doesn't seem like we're giving ourselves a pay raise, but rather addressing the very real, how do we attract more candidates for a stronger democracy? And I think that's what Director Sparrow and Dr. Boyko were talking about. So I would assume that that would happen, but we can leave it undefined until we have further conversations about it. Doctor, go ahead.
So I would like to see that happen later this year in 2024, so that if we so choose, we could actually add that. So and I would agree that for the directors only, not families, is what I've heard a lot of different organizations do. Most incorporated areas do have compensation for their councillors and mayors. I've heard a lot of EA directors that are not compensated at all. And I've also witnessed a lot of electoral area directors and councillors step away from the position because of the compensation, how it affects their livelihood, their families, and it does make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I would be comfortable with potentially contemplating having this discussion as a part of strategic planning later in this year, like you said. So that's something, if we leave it undefined for a future conversation, then we can just add it to agendas as time goes by. Just make sure you hit me over the head with it on email as it comes up, right? Dr. Roth, go ahead.
It says here that on the agenda package that in 2026, there'd be an independent review of directors' remuneration. So that's before the.
Yeah, that would be in prep for that. So we'd be able to do work on it, moving forward on it, maybe even communicate it if the decision's made to have that contemplated by that, whoever the working group is. It's usually what we do is we appoint a working group to make a reco and go from there. So I don't know what the motion is at that point, or if it requires one. Daniel? Just, do we want to define like an actual date or like link it to strategic planning, Director Cote?
I'd like to link it to strategic planning, yes.
Yeah. Should we just do an amendment to make sure that it's raised at that point then? So do you want to move an amending motion?
I'll move the amending motion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. So this is just to amend to add on the fact that we will have a discussion during strategic planning later this year. So like November. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. So the motion is now amended. All those in favor of the amended motion? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to 07. I would note that we have 45 minutes left before lunch, but we can maybe go over lunch because I think we're past them. We're almost halfway. 07, Transportation Committee scope. Daniel.
Thank you. So the board has already established a transportation committee. We've had a meeting and started our discussions. What we have not yet done is gone into any great depth around how much do we want to do when we start exploring alternative routes, and you know what we would. Well, we know that we want to present something to the province. The question is, how much information and public engagement do you want around that? So there are elements such as doing the economic impact assessment of a full closure to the valley or further west, cost benefit impacts of alternative routes, the discussion around potential costs for maintenance of an emergency route versus full construction of an alternative route highway. There's engagement with different interested parties, and particularly I would flag the treaty nations in terms of their appetite to share economic visions and whether or not an alternative route in any one specific area would have an impact on that. And then depending on the models that come out, whether the depth of public engagement that we would look to advance in order to have a business plan that's hopefully endorsed by the general public in the area, or at least understood. Now, that would be sort of having the most comprehensive business case assembled versus bringing in a facilitator to have the committee dialogue the information that is known, review the information that has been collected in the past, and put forward a lobbying strategy just based on the discussions of the group. So the two alternatives, one is estimated at about 70,000 and the other at about 10,000. And so what we wanted through this pick is to have some discussion with the board around the expectations of what's going to come out of the Transportation Committee's work in 2024.
Just to note, this is about what Houay was spending every year to get the Banfield Road worked. So that included like staff time and GR firms and that sort of thing, but yes, that's pretty close. So, and if it's, any further comments? Dr. Boyko?
Thank you very much. So the alternative route has been discussed in various boards and forums for over 100 years here. It started in 1910, 1920s, carries on. We've had multiple studies multiple times on different routes and connectors and blah, blah, blah. And I've seen maps and budget estimates and everything. I'm hesitant to spend this money because I don't think anything will happen until we get some commitment from MOTI. And if our history over the past 100 years has said anything, nothing has changed. So at the Christmas Day event where the road was closed because some debris fell down, it was told that the alternative route was closed, which was not true because I had family members drive through it 5 a.m. on Boxing Day. So we're passing misinformation from from the BC Ministry of Transportation out there to the public. And I don't think it's right. So Monday morning, I drove to Tofino at 5 a.m. and they had a big sign up there saying road closed, pull over, check drive BC. So I said, pull over, check drive BC. Boom. Out was a landslide at Bingham Bay. I said, screw it, I'm already here. Drove through it and it had already been cleared up. So the way that things are transcribed, whether we're open or closed from MOTI to people, is not working very well. We had a town hall on Sunday. One of the persons said we should have a little sign similar to what's at School Lake on the way to town at Pound. Said, hey, the road's closed, backup roads open, that kind of thing. I support that kind of thing. But spending $70,000 on studies that we've been trying to do for the last 100 years in the valley, I don't support. Thank you.
Thanks. I didn't read this as being studies though, because I actually think all the work that's been done up to date has been sufficient to get in the door. It's more about getting out there and actually lobbying and building consensus, which is why the costs would be more about the engagement costs and the actual travel for conversations. And that's, did I misread that? Because that's how much it cost us to get out and actually shake hands and get people to agree to Banfield Road and that sort of thing. I don't care about the route. I don't care about the specifics. I care about getting political people to say yes to the concept and locking them into that. And that's a political thing. That's what I know how to do. It's what I do in Ottawa. It's what I do in Victoria. So I think having the appropriate resourcing for lobbying and political pressure is what this is for. It's not hiring somebody to do a study, but it might be hiring somebody to engage with other potential allies to kind of gang up on the province and the feds on this, especially the feds. They need to be in on this. But maybe that's, Daniel, is that kind of what's contemplated? Like, what is, was I reading into it?
No, you're reading correctly. Ultimately, the efforts are coordinating different agencies, different interested parties, and being prepared to research and get the answers to questions that people have that might be preventing a successful lobbying effort. And that's where putting in economic impact, we know that the chamber is working on the economic impact and they received a grant to do that. Now, we still have to collect it, assemble it, and make sure that what's being presented is something that our group supports and feels that they can present. We know that as we explore alternative routes, we already know what those routes are. The question is, do we want to go into further depth? There's been a lot of estimates around, the 45-minute route versus the 4-hour route and the cost to make that drivable for a regular vehicle. What costs are real? Do we want estimates or do we not want estimates? And we don't know what the province is doing. We do know that they intend to do some work, but we don't know the depth to that. So in making our assumptions for a budget, we'd rather play it safe and say, look, if we're going to do some of this work and research, we need to make sure that we have a budget that allows for it. If we don't have to do that work, so be it. It'll be a smaller budget, but we still have to prepare and move people to the right spaces in order to do the lobbying efforts that they want to succeed at. And we still have to make sure that the group that we're mobilizing feels confident. And that confidence comes with having a solid either business case or solid information. So because there's so many moving parts, that's why you see such a big range. Having a facilitated discussion is not nearly as expensive as doing research, moving and lobbying and mobilizing people in different circles. And so, it's a tough estimate to create. And we've used examples from other outreach and initiatives that we've done here in the region to come up with that range.
Okay. I have more questions, but it feels like it would be a waste of time. Director Cote?
Thank you. So it says some possible funding could come from the grant received to explore a business plan for Island Rail. So would there, and other grants. So I'd really like to see this covered. I personally, I think that the province should be paying for this. And I'd like to ask them that. So what are we expecting? If we put this in the budget, what are we expecting to ask the taxpayers for? Thanks.
Thanks. Go ahead.
So that's why we have the range that is there. We're expecting the taxpayer to cover that range. Now, it could be that the board says, you know, we don't want to in the absence of a grant, or we want to work within a budget of X amount of dollars, and we'll do what we can within that budget. But what we need is we need to understand what budget we're attributing to this and what the overall desires are for that budget. I have had the discussion with the two nations that are also part of the rail grant, and there's an appetite to support this, but they also want to be clear that the rail initiative is about their land, their corridor, and alternatives on that. And so they don't see the application of this grant to all aspects of a reroute, although there clearly are some that would overlap. We have issued an RFP, and I'm reviewing the submissions in order to do the rail work, and it would be a natural fit if we wanted to add some of this work to whichever group we hire on rail, because there'll be similar work and similar initiatives. But there again, I don't want to set up expectations that we can do a complete business plan and all this outreach for 10,000. And I'm really trying to manage those expectations and get some direction on budget. Like I said, it is challenging, and there is a strong likelihood of grant funding. It's just, I don't think that grant funding would cover all of it, that's for sure.
Thank you. I have Director Beckett, then Director Ross, and then Director Minions. And then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I personally think that we could park this for a short period of time. And the reason I'm suggesting that is that the Transportation Advisory Committee has had one meeting, and I am one of the directors involved with that committee. My sense is that we're beginning with a focus on relationships between those sitting at the table, which includes MOTI. And it also, I'd like to think, is focusing on a commitment to action and to resolve. And as we move forward with these meetings, I think that we will have a more tangible outcome and understanding of the next steps and the processes that we're going to have to go through. You know, and again, personally, my hope would be that through the committee process, we will bring the partners together, similar to what Hawaii did with the Banfield Road project, so that there is a sense of collaboration and agreement that something has to be done moving forward. So those are my comments, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Director Beckett. I have Director Minions and then Director McEwen. And then we'll go back to Director Beckett if you wanted to move something to that nature after everyone speaks. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you. I'm not opposed to holding off on this for the time being, but I think that that personally, I think this is the most important issue, I would say, to our community members right now, and making progress on this. And I think that we, in no capability or in no sense, should believe that that's not going to cost money. And I think it's a great thought that we ask the province to pay for it. But in order to make progress, in order to be able to have a strong case to put forward, regardless of what the Transportation Committee determines is the best path area of focus, we need to have adequate funds to be able to do the background work, to be able to advocate properly. We need to have a strategic plan, and I I think that sometimes we have an expectation that we're going to ask another level of government for something and see it funded. And if we don't recognize the background work that needs to go into it, the work, the planning, and the background details, we're going to have an uncoordinated approach and continue to be unsuccessful. So I think we need to properly fund this. It's a top priority for our constituents, and I think certainly for our community. If we want to hold off until the Transportation Committee does a bit more work, not opposed to that. But I think if we're holding off because we think we're not going to pay for it at some point, then we're not being realistic. We need to pay for it if we want to make any progress, whether we move forward now or move forward later. Thank you.
Thanks. That's how it worked with the Hooyet-Banfield Road Reconciliation Project. Director McEwen and then Director Beckett.
Thank you, Chair. The two West Coast chambers, the Tofino and the Ucluelet Chamber, did poll the business community after the closure this summer, and the total costs to the tourism industry specifically was $44 million. So that it's a top priority for the West Coast as well, is to find a different route. Having said that, I kind of feel like the X factor is the logging companies, because we need them at the table to discuss this. And if some money needs to be put aside to carry this work out, I feel that's really important.
I'll talk to Solwaka and Western and Mosaic. I have Director Beckett, then Cote, then Sparrow, then I have a comment. So Director Beckett and then Cote.
Thank you. Just before I make the motion to park it momentarily, it is easy to be cynical about the lack of action over the years. All I can say is I've heard very loud and clear from my colleagues around this table that this is critically urgent, that we need to move forward with this. We have set a transportation committee in place. This is an opportunity to move forward, and that I absolutely agree with those colleagues today that recognize that we are going to have to invest some money moving forward. So my recommendation is that we park this and discuss this at the Transportation Committee meeting and try to determine some timelines for having something tangible to bring back to the board and our partnering community councils. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Dr. Roth, second? Thank you. Okay, we'll continue on with comments. I have Dr. Cote and then Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. Looking at the agenda, it talks about engaging a consultant to undertake this work for $70,000. To me, that doesn't speak to lobbying. It talks about a consultant. So I don't really, to me, in my mind, that's two separate things. So what the consultant would do would be basically similar to a study, to engaging hopefully the foresters and finding out the actual cost of what has the implications of a secondary route being our main route being cut off has actually done to our community. So if that's what it's for, then I understand that, but I don't see where the lobbying comes in. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote. Director Sparrow?
Well, thank you for that. I'm also on the Transportation Committee, and like Director Beckett said, we only have one meeting so far and haven't really got consensus yet. And hopefully we can next month on our next second meeting, and we can bring it back before the end of the budget season. But it does say here that it's going to be $70,000 in 2024, implying, of course, it's more work to be done, more years, more costly. So is there any idea how long this consultant would be in play until there was a result?
Okay, so that brings us to me. So I can answer that. If we still want to continue to move this forward, then I would expect to spend a substantive amount of money. If you think 70 grand is a lot, yes. it would continue, at least. If you want to move the needle on this, it doesn't matter if you have a good plan. You have to get in and find the actual points of leverage that will change minds on cabinet and change minds at Treasury Board. And so the consultant that we bring in are people who are experts on cabinet and experts on Treasury Board. Doesn't matter the road plan. We just have to have enough to make a good argument. And we already have a lot of that already. What we don't have are people who are thinking about how do we get Rob Fleming to change his mind, given that every other community in BC is looking for the same amount of money. We need to find points of leverage. We need to find points where cabinet members will actually say, yeah, I'll go for that. How do we get Bowen Mont? How do we get all of these other cabinet members? And that consultant is a GR firm. It's a Hill Knowlton. It's an Earnscliffe. It's a Cedric Strategies. It's all these kind of groups that actually have connections to members of government to get you into those meetings that you can't get to. That's how we did it with Huayet, and that's how it gets done in the forestry sector that I'm also a part of. That's what we need to do, because it's going to be a bloodbath landslide for the NDP this next election because of the vote splitting. They'll probably have more seats as a result, which means they'll have more power to get more done, but then they're more willing to be picky and choosy about what they're going to do because they're not worried about the next election. So we need to find points of leverage, and we have to do it like this. But I do think that we do need to have information from the committees, but politically, these decisions won't get made because they're good ideas. They're good ideas. So Director Haggard and then Director Sparrow.
Thank you. I remember sitting around this table. It was everyone's priority to get this done. So I'm don't quite understand the hesitancy about not supporting this motion. And I'm concerned that if we put it off until the Transportation Committee meets and comes to a consensus, we won't be able to put it in our budget. Just because it's in our budget, we don't have to spend it tomorrow, but I think it needs to be in our budget so we can get going on this project as soon as we possibly can. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Sparrow, and then did I miss anybody? Director Boyko.
Oh, thank you. I have one follow-up question. So we have this person to lobby for us at the provincial government level. How many years do you think it would take with your experience before with it be done? So we know roughly how many years we have to pay.
Because something has already happened, I would expect probably within the next 18 months if we're successful, within the next 2 years if we're not. But there's a weird wedge time that we won't get anything done because of the election. And we're just going to run into that no matter what. So there's a lot of time planning around this. But in terms of their legislative schedules, in terms of the amount of meetings that they have in caucus, you only have like maybe 2 or 3 instances where you can get new ideas put onto their agenda for even discussion. But that doesn't mean they'll agree to it. At a caucus level, a cabinet level, and at a Treasury Board level, in that order. So we have to work on all of them. And that's just, we've already got some of the work done, but it hasn't been organized. The reason why we picked up so much is honestly and cynically because of the deaths of the students on the Banfield Road and the Huayet experience. You have to find points of leverage and really work those. And we did. And that took not just Huayet, it took other First Nations, it took Mayor Minions and Bob leveraged his connections to Brother Horgan at that point. And that's how it happened. We had advantages that were not accounted for, and it had almost nothing to do with any of the technical data. That's all internal fighting that we don't talk to the province about. This is, I think, how it's going to have to get done, but we can take the time to have a discussion as well. Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just find it interesting and a little bit disappointing that we need to pay a consulting firm to do lobbying on our behalf instead of getting our MLA in here, and that's who we should be approaching. Because from someone that comes in here, I would think that's who we talk to, and they organize it. My thoughts.
Yeah, that's how I thought it was supposed to be as well. I mean, that's just it. There are things that she's doing in the background, but because she's a cabinet member, there's stuff she can't talk about. like even about the lobbying stuff, like it's hardcore and it happens federally as well. So we have an opposition member federally, so we can work more openly with that person, but then it's annoying to the Liberal cabinet too, right? So there's a balancing act there. And I don't know how the factions are changing within the NDP. I know that they do exist though, and they don't really talk about that because I'm not an NDPer. But those are the things where this is just how it works, and we have to engage with people who have inroads, and usually they're GR firms because it's worth a lot of money to have inroads in government, and that's why these companies snap up these people with connections, and that's what we'd have to do. Yeah, things are only worth what people will pay. So with that, I do think we should wait for the committee to come back, but I think that that's kind of the short shrift of it. Any other comments or questions? Did we have a motion to actually wait? Okay, we did. I didn't write it down. My apologies. All right. Thank you, Bob. And seeing no further comment, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Hey, can I just clarify, I voted no because I wanted the budget. Now I don't want to wait. Thanks.
No, that's fair. Thank you. Yeah. That's what I assumed. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, that brings us to reconciliation workshops. Jenny, this is pick 8. I don't know what page it is.
Thank you. Yes, so this is an opportunity for the board to look at working on reconciliation workshops. Historically, obviously, the ACRD has supported the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada and has made a commitment to become further engaged in reconciliation. The strategic plan is fully supportive of this and moving forward with efforts. Typically within our organization, we do a lot of work for this, but it's very ad hoc. And so we've had a few things happen recently where we're looking at just coming up with a more unified approach and also expanding it so that it's not just looking at one-off staff training. We're looking at doing all of our staff, as well as directors, as well as volunteers, and really putting in a concerted effort towards like raising our collective knowledge and making a concerted effort towards reconciliation in our region. There's a few components within here that we looked at. One of them is to build on some of the local training that has already been developed and has been rolling out over the last year with the Colonize First training. And so we would be looking at developing specific workshops for that and including, again, huge group of people, which is why the cost is what it is. So we're looking at volunteers as well as staff, directors, and opening that up potentially to some of our other municipal partners. And so we've got an estimated cost of $30,000. That is just an estimate at this point. And we also have secured about $12,000 worth of funding towards that component of this project. We see this as being a highly likely grant opportunity for grants that come available. So we would be continuing to seek grants to subsidize those costs. The other component was looking at doing some more organized events around National Truth and Reconciliation Day, and then some department team building through local First Nations team building activities. And so we've had a few areas within the organization who have gone and done both. It's sort of like department team building. So the department itself works together, and then also using First Nations and local learning knowledge as the focus of what that team building is around. The feedback that we've received from that has been immense. When we talk about retention and compensation, I would actually argue that team building and other things we do in the organization actually work really well towards staff retention. So we bundled this up as a package because it is an opportunity for the board to work on we can actually move forward on a project that focuses on this. We can also look at, adjusting the scope and the cost in order to make sure that we've got grant funding, being sensitive to, of course, the costs to taxation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Looking at this, to me, it kind of looks like it could fall under the Health Network. A lot of work that's been done by the Health Network on training and opportunities has come through that organization. Grants through the United Way and Tamarack on training, I think might be an opportunity for us to gain grants to help to fund these initiatives. Also, AVICC is providing some training also for local government. So at our convention coming up, we'll be offering a few things that are actually covered under a grant that we've received many years ago on reconciliation that we can use now for anything to do with reconciliation. Thank you.
Thanks. There may be opportunities for us to engage with NCANG's ministry, the municipal ministry. There's some high level of enthusiasm for that as well. So we should follow up there. Director Roth, go ahead.
I'd like to make the motion, but to make it grant dependent or depending on grant funding.
Thank you. Are there a seconder? Second?
I'll second that. What do you got?
Comment? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair. I'll second that motion, but I also have another cost. Are we looking at this being a one-off cost, or is this going to be 30 grand per year? Are there other options that we can do? We have a lot of leaders of local First Nations in the room and on the screen right now. I'd like to see if we can potentially work to a way to reduce the cost of taxpayers for this. Can we reuse t-shirts so people don't have 10 different orange t-shirts in 10 years from now? Because I see some potential here.
Go ahead, Jenny.
This proposal is just for this year. And again, these are very broad cost estimates. So if we were looking at, if depending on the success and what we looked at for next year for our work plan, we would be looking at something different. So this is just specifically for 2024 right now before you.
Okay. Dr. Cote, did I miss someone? No? Okay.
Thank you. Would any of these projects or initiatives be able to be covered by C2C grant?
That was my sense that I got when I was speaking to Brent Mueller from the Municipal Affairs Ministry. So that's something that we can follow up to lower the cost as well. They were very enthusiastic about having multiple C2C events, which means it might be maybe different groups applying for the funding, but contributing to the same idea. So I think there are definitely grant options available. So, any further comments, Dr. Haggard?
I think this is a great initiative, but if we don't get grant funding, I would like to propose that it comes back to the board for funding from our budget at that time, because I don't want it to fall by the wayside. We need to do it some way or somehow.
Yeah, so just in case I forget, we can add it to the agenda if it doesn't as well. So as long as people here remind me, we can do that. Okay, with that, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Yeah, if we were to do something similar that we did with, I forget John Rampin's co-host name, but that sort of thing was great. Yeah. That brings us to the next item, 09. That's equitable employment opportunities. Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so this did go to the Alberni Valley and Banfield Committee. We got a lot of support from the committee to work on this. However, some of the feedback, originally what we were looking at, because it came out of, as a key initiative out of our landfill working group, and we were working with our Sashot partner who we work with on the landfill, and we sort of had an opportunity for alignment on this. It came to the committee was very supportive. There was one concern that if we're working on equitable employment initiatives, they do not want it to seem as though we aren't being fully inclusive. And that was really, we heard that loud and clear from staff. Concurrently, when it went to the Sashot Council, they also felt the same. They said, it's great that we were thinking of this partnership to get the ball rolling, but they feel that we should be looking at this from a broader perspective. So we've brought that back and looked at it to see, okay, well, how do we move forward if we're going to be looking at this regionally? And I think for the ACRD to look at a fully inclusive system for having equitable employment sort of integrated into our organization, we think we do need a consultant to come in, do a gap analysis, help us facilitate conversations with all of our nations to figure out, what is the real underlying issue here and how do we actually make progress and be successful? Yeah, that is sort of the essence of this. I'll leave it at that. We're estimating $20,000. Again, that's an estimate. And we're looking for board support.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions or comments, Director Boyko? And then Director Roth.
Yes, thank you. My question would be, is this just to increase the First Nation representation of ACRD staff?
Excellent question. So yes, that is a big one. So we do want our staff to represent the people in our region. So, and we're not convinced that that's really happening because there are a lot of barriers for people to come into the organization, but we're probably not the best people to actually see what those are sometimes. Also, the other thing that was identified was, especially when we're having these in-depth conversations with Sachad, is that there's barriers for them to get people into local government from their community, into their own local government. So that actually is a really interesting component of this when you start to dig into it is we're probably going to be looking at just trying to find ways to get more people and more people within our First Nations communities to start looking at local government as a real opportunity for careers because they're local, they're good paying, and whether that's at the ACRD or within any of the municipalities or any of the First Nations, it is all about getting people interested in local government. So a little bit broader, but yes, definitely for our organization.
Did you have another question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My two questions: can we look at grants for this? And secondly, should the ACRD be funding this through public means, or should we be looking at First Nations help for the funding of this? Thank you.
I can answer the first one. We can absolutely look for grant funding. And I think the second question really is the question that the board has to decide.
Director Roth was next.
My concern is that we're restricting this to the Chalmers community. There's a lot of First Nations that aren't in Chalmers that live in Port Alberni, so I'd like it to be open to all First Nations.
Thank you, Dr. Roth. I think legally we can't differentiate between Shawanoes and Indigenous folks. So I think that'll just end up being that way anyway. I don't know if anybody said anything, if that's okay, to Dr. Haggard. I do see this as something that we may want to consider in regards to the political value of doing right by Tashot in regards to the landfill and that sort of thing. So this is, I think, part of the deal. So with that, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I wonder if there's an opportunity for the ACRD to partnership with the city on this initiative, because we've also have discussed about how to get more First Nations into municipal government positions.
There is. What would be nice is still to know that we're working on a budget. And if we get grants, then, you know, at the end of the day, this sits under general governance and it goes, it's not lost. But the development of a strategy and the gap analysis and coming up with that coordination is significant work. And I would rather start with it as opposed to wait and hope for grants and then mobilize. We have good momentum right now. We have good dialogue with Tashot, with Cloquet, with Ubachesset. You know, we've done things on our own accord and people have paid their own way. So if I can flag just our supervisory training that we did across the region last year, isn't targeted specifically at the equitable employment, but contributes towards lowering barriers, because what we had was the nations and local government staff training together. And the fact that we just bring ourselves together to have dialogue and talk professionally about the things that are similar and different and learn together breaks down barriers in and of itself. And that's just a small part. Having a strategy that talks to all the parts so that in future years we can say, look, we're going to do this together, or we can sit down with any of the treaty nations or non-treaty nations and say, hey, do you want to work together on this aspect and seek grants? If we don't actually have the strategy, we're really just scraping at the edges and we're missing some good opportunities, because right now we have good relationships. And I would prefer to go to the nations and say, let's make a plan and then let's talk about co-investment. And preferably through the region, because people are always saying, well, what's the value of the regional district? Well, the value is we can actually create, you know, services and initiatives that are decided together at one table, which is way more efficient than running to 10 and saying, what do you think? And what do you think? And what do you think? This is the table we want to set. So of the initiatives that I would like to see a budget, I think this is one that we can get grants, but I would encourage us to at least backstop it in case we don't.
Can I make the motion, Mr. Chair?
Please go ahead.
I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 09, General Government Equitable Employment Opportunities in the 2024 to 2028 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Coots. Any further comments? And welcome to the agenda or the minutes, Director Coots. Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Once again, I think this might qualify for a C2C grant. But I can't remember if they'll pay 100% or if it's 50.
I think it varies right now. At least they're contemplating making it vary, and I don't know how that's going to.
Okay, yeah.
Pull out. I may throttle Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation as well. See if there's anything
Excellent. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Any further comments? Dr. Roth, go ahead. Oh, Dr. Boyko, then Dr. Roth. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My comment would be, are we setting ourselves up for potential problem by specifically mentioning First Nations for increasing equitable employment and ignoring all the other visible minorities in this valley, such as everybody else? Because there are a large percentage of other people that are not represented here.
That's fair. Go ahead, Daniel.
And that is a really good question. And so legislation protects us in terms of working with any minority that's identified under the Charter. First Nations are. So by focusing on just this right now, we're not in violation of any legislation. What I would argue is that we're actually opening it up, because if we start with a good strategy to work with First Nations and break down barriers, it's a natural extension to start looking at other areas. And we've had discussions about the cultural diversity of the Alberni Valley. And you know, like I would say, start with a strategy, get it working, and expand that strategy towards the other areas that are identified and protected under the Charter. But if we don't start somewhere, it's going to be hard to break that down. And I think if we start by trying to include everyone, we're going to set ourselves up for a really delayed success. I would say not long-term failure, but it just larger strategies by their very nature are more complex and take more time.
And from a legal political perspective, the Indigenous communities have collective rights in Canada, and they're surrounded by the Constitution. So they're kind of a different class of conversation than when compared to other visible minorities or not visible minorities, which is antiquated language, but I can't remember what you're supposed to say. This doesn't stop us from having a conversation during strategic planning in the next year about what our community strategy could be for the Sikh community or for Ukrainian refugees or that sort of thing as well. But it's just one of those things where we would have to prioritize having the conversation at some point. So I don't see it as restrictive. Any further comments? Dr. Roth and then Dr. Cote?
I would like to amend the motion to be dependent on 50% grant funding.
50% grant funding? Okay. All right. Is that okay with folks? Second, do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Dr. Boyko. Actually, sorry, who moved it? If you moved it originally, you didn't? Okay. Oh yeah, you did. Sorry. I didn't write it down. Yeah. Thank you. So on that amendment, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Dr. Cote?
Thank you. We have 2 months before the budget has to be passed. I'm wondering how long it would take to actually apply for these grants. If we could see if we can get the grants in place before the budget has to be adopted.
Go ahead, Terry.
Every grant has its own rolling deadline, and every grant has its own timeline as to when they let us know. Some of them are quite immediate. Some of them we wait a really long time. I believe we just got awarded a C2C in like the last month. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that. Okay. So we have had an active intake for a C2C recently. So it would be like our next in line. So to be submitted and awarded before March is unlikely.
I'm sure that staff are really busy right now as well with getting the budget together and don't really have time to apply for these grants immediately, so understandable.
Any further comments? So this is the amended motion now? All those in favor? No, we voted on the amendment. Yeah, I'm enforcing process, and that's why we're adding an extra half hour to the meeting. Okay, all those in favor, sorry? All opposed? Okay, motion carried, thank you. Okay, so speaking of adding half an hour to the meeting, we have, I think, 8 or 9 more items, and it's noon. What hour should we have a 10-minute break to grab food and then come back, or do we want to? Yeah, okay. Please look at the agenda, see if there's things that we want to hit before we hit 1 o'clock. Okay, so we'll recess for 10 minutes to take a break, grab food, and then come back. Okay, back at 10 after. Thank you. All right, we're gonna start pretty quick here. I should have said 15 minutes. It seems like that's the natural amount of time. We have a few people who are quickly running to the washroom or grabbing another piece of pizza, so it look like Okay, thank you, everyone. So the next item is PIC 10, PIC 10, General Government Hole in the Wall Feasibility Study. So this looks like, Jenny, are you all done chewing? Yeah, yeah. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes. So hole in the wall, the board has supported this resolution to go ahead and look at a feasibility study and do some options investigation. However, there is a cost to this, which will be out of general government because we currently have no service for this, for the hole in the wall. It doesn't exist in a service. So the estimated cost is going to be $20,000, and it will also have staff time, which is about 80 hours of staff time. So we wanted to bring this to the board prior to building the financial plan to confirm that this is something that we do want to do, considering the impact. Of course, as a reminder, there are a lot of safety issues around the hole in the wall. This has been an ongoing discussion for a number of years. However, the ACRD does not hold any associated legal risk or liability currently. Happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Haggard, go ahead, and then Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this was a good attraction for the community. There's so many different layers to getting this up to a standard where people can legally go there and park there. And I feel it would just take too much staff time. They have too many higher priority items to be working on at this time. So I will not be supporting this motion at this time.
Thank you. Dr. Sparrow and then Dr. Roth.
Well, thank you for that. So the hole in the wall is becoming an attraction, whether we like it or not, personally. And people are still making their way there. The ACRD does not have any property liability in the area. However, there is property in that area. There's property there that is fee simple property. There's subdivision plans and there's statutory right-of-ways in that area owned by another person or corporation. No, it is not a forest company. So maybe we should talk to the person that actually owns the property because they may be more liable than we are and see if we can work together with this and see what direction we can come together in unison with them. If not, then we'll have to just let them know that they're the ones that are liable.
Thank you. Dr. Ross.
I'm just curious to know if the hole in the wall is on private property or the private managed forest lands or TFL. Like, what is it?
Thank you. So the majority of the trail is actually on Mosaic Forest land. And yeah, and so the hole in the wall itself is the old water transmission hole through the dam that used to be there that the city has. But the trail and the access point and everything else is currently on Mosaic land. Owned by Mosaic. It's not a 10-year house.
Thanks. Dr. Blicko.
Thank you, Chair. So my comments are, I'm going to be voting against this because very similar reasons as Deb Haggard spoke out. It's a lot of time. The ACRD has no jurisdiction there. I don't know if we should be sticking our nose in things just because it's a potential tourist attraction. There's many other potential tourist attractions in this valley, all over the trails and falls and all the other little things in the whole Alberta Lake Park Regional District. That's what keeps this place nice and beautiful. I see this exploding into a huge potential can of worms where we're going to add parking lots, where we're going to have trails, are we going to pave roads, are we going to pave the trails, can we have wheelchair access, blah, blah, blah. It's just going to keep exploding.
Thank you. Any further comments? Dr. Coetzee, go ahead.
Thank you. There's, I'd say a push from me anyways, for this board to have a regional parks committee revived, brought forward again. And I think that this would be a great property to be putting into that regional parks. I have a question around the acquisition of this property purchased through Cherry Creek Parks money that is in lieu of park. Just wondering if that would be an opportunity.
I think the first step would, of course, be doing some options investigation. And because the land currently is owned by Mosaic, we haven't asked them if they're looking to sell the land. But yeah, we've just had preliminary discussions about how do we address the hole in the wall.
Any further comments? Deb, did you have your hand up, or is it just your cast?
Oh.
Okay, okay. No, okay. I wasn't sure. Any further comments? See none. So do we have a motion just to kind of, or just do nothing? Like, what's the next step?
If there's no motion, we just move on.
Okay, let's just do that then. Okay. Next item is general government video information sessions for the website. Daniel, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a matter that we had discussed throughout the year, and it is also identified within our strategic plan. Expanding our horizons to more than just written information and looking at audiovisual short videos to explain a wide range of things, so we can explore things like initiatives that are going on, existing policies and practices. What we do find is that for a number of different people, the reading of documents is not their preferred outreach or engagement methodology, and having some videos is something that could complement that and may be well received. Some of the discussions that we've had with peers across the region, so with Alberni and Tofino, for example, and with Tashad, have all had individuals saying that they would also like to work on something like this, where we're working on a library of video information. And in this pick, what we have done is we have included a number of different examples that have been used from the Comox Valley, from Welcome Beach, from Nanaimo, Abbotsford. And I did my best in this one to identify the range of costs that you would see. Obviously, I think Abbotsford's is the most expensive example, with some notable hired help to create a rather long video. Our vision of this would be really trying to stay to a 30 to 60 second video. The question is what degree of quality would the board want? And that really does impact the overall cost per video. If we were to proceed, there are two options three that we're identifying. One is the budget of $35,000. If that is too high, then an alternative being $25,000 for the year. And the third alternative is to delay doing this for a year. The reason why we have the 35 and 25 is that it's going to take the same amount of staff time to coordinate, put out an RFP and start working on this project, whether we do 3 videos or whether we do 13 videos. And I would like to make sure that if we're advancing, we have a sufficient budget to at least do a package of about 10 to a dozen. And that way, we're at least attracting attention. It becomes a bit of a source. We can have a theme. If it's around planning, we can focus on planning, and we can properly gauge how effective it is and how the public reacts to it. If you have one video, it doesn't really change behaviors. And the amount of staff time to go into coordinating all the efforts will be about the same. So the recommendation here is a $35,000, the alternative being the $25,000. And if not that, then we would recommend we delay and just refocus our attention to 2025 or beyond. If there's questions, I'll take them.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just looking at the ACRD website here, YouTube channel, what has been done in the past. And I'm looking at a package of 10 Fire Smart videos that were done a year and a half ago. 10 videos, all 32 seconds to 1 minute timeline, and a total in 1 year of 144 views. So spending $35,000 on a set of 10 videos for 140 views, or whatever thing is going to happen there, I do not see a lot of value in that. I've looked at all the videos here. The ones with the highest video watching is the Sort and Go on the West Coast. But that is an anomaly in basically everything that's been done in the past. So to say that the people want to watch videos because they have been uploaded and done in the past, I don't know if that's a viable option. And that's my thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel, and then Dr. Roth.
It's a good comment and an observation. I think one of the differences with Sort and Go versus the FireSmart is our active promotion of directing people to the information. And I think this is part of the package that we're talking about, or that I would like to talk about, is how is it presented online? How are people being directed to it? How are we promoting it as a means for engagement and gaining information? I think that's part of the package. This said, if the board does not feel it's effective, that's okay as well. There's no emotional attachment to the additional work. I just want to flag that I think our role in structuring and pointing the public towards the information or that platform of information has to be part of the strategy of the strategy.
Thank you, Daniel. I agree with that, but at the same time, we've had a FireSmart person for a couple of years now, and whenever you see him, he's definitely promoting going and watching the videos. So if we got one person promoting it full time, I don't see a lot of change, how it would change in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Roth and then Dr. Haggard.
And I've been involved in making videos before in my workplace, and we've actually received grant funding to do it. And we too found them really ineffective, like very low views. So I don't think it's just ACRD, it's probably the nature of people. But yeah, I have a hard time with $35,000. So I'm wondering if we could make this grant dependent and look for grants to fund something like this.
Thank you. Is there a cost to making it grant dependent? Like, is there, I guess, staff time?
Yeah, it would be staff time. We'd look for opportunities and apply for grants. And if we don't find any opportunities or if we miss them, then we simply don't proceed.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Just wondering, to the chair, to the city, do you do videos? And would that help alleviate some of our staff time? Thanks.
We have talked about doing videos, but we have not done any as of yet.
Thank you. Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. Last night at the Banfield Area Service Committee, Jenny did a commented about the budgeting process and in particular talked about asset management. And so I was curious and took a look at the video that was posted in this report. And personally, I see value in doing it. Although I agree with Director Roth, I'm wondering if there are other means of funding that could cover this, which got me thinking about a partnership with one of the universities or colleges that may be doing video productions or something along this lines. Bottom line is, I actually see some value. It's difficult sometimes to explain to folks in Banfield what it is we're doing and some of the processes. And a short video clip that's done well would certainly make my job a bit easier. But perhaps I'm the lone wolf advocating for this. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Haggard, then Director Sparrow.
Thank you. When I worked at Community Futures, we decided to do a video for the program that I ran. And we also did a video on how to apply for business loan. And it wasn't on YouTube, it was directly on our website. So you would click on how to apply for business loan and the video would come up. So I wrote like a draft script and we had somebody do it. It was more like a cartoon figures. So it was short, sweet, easy to watch. And we had good success with it. So I had an opposite experience of what Director Boyko was talking about. We found it very effective.
Thank you. Dr. Sparrow.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to echo what Director Beckett said regarding alternate ways of doing it, like through the college we have here, or maybe the high school, get them involved, and it would be cost effective, one thing, but also they get experience what they can do in editing, because you can do a lot on the phone now you couldn't do 10 years ago with a whole studio. So it would give them a chance to figure what they can do and what we can do, and hopefully we can put some things together as a trial basis for next year. And if it is effective, then so be it. If it's not, we haven't already wasted too much time and energy. Thank you.
Thanks. Any further comments? I think videos can be effective, but it requires someone who has the time and effort to manipulate the algorithms for social media sharing. So the only way that you pump up views is by sharing them at certain times and multiple times on various social media platforms. Very rarely do you get governments where people go to the ACRD thing. It's usually through a link on Facebook or on X or Instagram and so on and so forth. And so if we don't have the time to have someone actively share those things, the only things that people usually go and look for are now under the purview of like Facebook groups. So people who are worried about driving the hump, they don't load up Drive BC. They go to the How's the Hump Facebook group, right? Like I contribute to that. I look at that, right? And so there are things that we can do to go there, but it would cost time and money, and we don't have the resources. The last time the ACRD was doing really well on that was we set up a separate Facebook page for the emergency program. And so for whatever reason, the emergency program was sharing at the right time multiple times so that it was getting on people's feeds, because the algorithm is opaque now. We can't exploit it easily anymore. So we could do it, but it would take time. And that's almost independent of the quality of the videos, as you can see by some of the YouTube and TikTok celebrities. So I think it just comes down to whether or not we want to. And there are always other ways to share that info and do the video, but then use that as a resource that we share in captive audiences as well. So making a grant funded might be a good idea. I'm kind of neutral on this myself too. Any further comments, Dr. Roth?
I would like to make the motion, but yet grant dependent.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Dr. Sparrow, thank you. Any further comments? All those in favor? And motion carried. Thank you. There's already a majority. Everyone just put their hands up really low because we're in like that post-lunch lull. Everyone's tired just from the eating. Okay, next item is item 12, Regional Community Parks Asset Inventory and Mapping. There is another item afterwards about the community parks as well, so let's not get them mixed up. Terry, please go ahead.
Thank you. So this is a grant funded proposal, but just wanted to get some discussion with the board. So this would be to do some GIS mapping and a bit more condition assessment with our asset management plan. Our version 1 of our asset management plan for parks really identified where all of our assets were, but we didn't really take the time to sink too much into condition in terms of we didn't look at every bridge on the Log Train Trail or culvert. So that's kind of the work that we're looking to do next. We do think we would have success. We're fairly certain we'd have some success with an asset management grant, as well as we do still have some GIS community works funding money that we'd already allocated towards asset management in the budget. But yeah, it'd be useful information for us making priorities moving forward in terms of where are we going to spend our resources. And I think that's all.
Thank you. Any comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Terry. How many bridges are we talking about here? Is it just the 2 on the Log Train Trail? Or is there a plethora more? I see by the way you're saying, shaking your head, there's a lot more. Second thing, is GIS level data required for a bridge that doesn't move? And we all know it's within 50 meters of where we think it is.
I think the focus, great questions, thank you. So Alberni Inlet, Log Train Trail, those are the 2 areas where we have the majority of our bridges. And we are finding that we don't know what state they're all in and what condition they're in and what we need to do to upgrade and replace them. So the bridges specifically are important in here, but then also, as Terry mentioned, it would be good to get a much better idea of where all of our assets are, what condition they're in, and should we be considering less assets? Do we retire these? Do we replace these? And getting a handle on that, because they can be a liability. The GIS level, I think Terry's more referring to the funding, because we will end up getting GIS information. Right now, we don't have a location for these things. They just live in a list and have no geo reference at all. I know. So it would be a matter of going out. We can even do it with our handheld to tag them so that they're out there. So the GIS component is so that we will be able to specifically map all of them.
GIS mapping is a new technology. It's brand new. Sorry, I'm being facetious. Yeah. No, I echo your sentiments.
Thank you, Chair. I find it really hard. Well, what do I say? If you go on Trails BC, every bridge is mapped out. Everyone knows where all the bridges are. They don't magically move around or disappear. That being said, as someone that does external engineering, I think if you're looking to hire someone to do that kind of work, to make as-built of things like this, that's what this is saying, isn't it?
Would be to take the as-built info that we have and layer it into the GIS, not get as-built built. Most of our as-built do not reside within the regional district because we've used external engineering firms and we've never taken ownership of those documents. So had that information transferred to us because we had no platform to transfer it to. So now that we have that platform to attach it so that we can have that information in-house, that's one of the steps that we're looking to do with this project.
No, thank you. Because I was going to say your estimate is way too low. Thank you.
So in regards, and this is just maybe an economic question. So in regards to asset management and tracking, is this going to create a cross-reference from mapping data and for the ledger data? Because you're the one presenting on this, but it's physical assets that Jenny's responsible
Yeah,
for.
totally. It's a combined effort between finance and ops for sure. So right now, finance has a listing and we've assigned an arbitrary asset number to these things, but there's no link between our finance data and when they're actually out on the ground, besides us hoping that we're talking about the same asset. So this would give us the ability for our ops staff to say, go out and be like, this bridge is in poor condition, they can flag it, but then that information would be fed into our asset management database. So then when we start talking about 5-year, 10-year, 15-year financial plans, and maybe they don't align with what our estimated useful lives were, that we can then start to see how that is. So these two sets of information are both existing, but they're existing separately. There's no link between them. So the GIS is kind of the link. We've been doing a project with the water system, Beaver Creek water system this year, and we're already seeing how that link between the two information is very valuable for the departments chatting about we're all talking about the same asset now all the time, and we can do some pretty great mapping things with the help of the mapping team to get there, or mapping person, no team, sorry. Yeah.
So have you tracked the amount of time that would save so you don't have to have meetings to get on the same page then? Because that sounds like what it does, right? Is that the main kind of value function, other than knowing when these things are going to die, right?
And also just getting better cost estimates on what condition they're in, when we're going to need to replace them. So that's where the asset management component comes in. And that really is it's a nebulous, we put some numbers together in our first version of the asset management plan for parks, but we need to go and one by one actually assess the condition and then when the replacement needs to happen and what the replacement value would be as well.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, Dr. Cote? Oh, sorry, Terry, then Director Cote.
Sorry, just to provide an example, a good portion of the Beaver Creek water system was put in all at the same time. So when we created the asset management plan, we were using estimated useful lives of pipes, but depending on the soil condition in each area, there can be a range of it's lasting longer than we hoped, it's not lasting as long as we hoped. And so by tracking breaks, for example, we can start seeing on the map where some hot spots are. And if we have 4 projects that are technically in the same year, all of a sudden that one project is really shining for us that we need to invest there first. So I find the water examples are a little bit more clear to explain, but it would be kind of that same philosophy that we're trying to put into parks now.
Yeah, geotechs will kick me under the table for this, but there are different values for clay different values for sand and like torsion and crush and all that stuff. So I understand that. It just feels like it's a lot more work than maybe we think. And I think we need to know that. So maybe doing this is important. Anyway, next up, any further comments? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Sprout Lake has a Parks Commission. We have GPS our trails. Personally went out with Lori past, Lori Wilson, doing that. We have an asset management plan for our parks. So that's already all completed. Talking about the trail, the inlet trail and also the log train trail. I think that they're separate entities. They are regional in park and perspective and relationship. So I'm looking at how this will all be funded. Community parks are not part of the regional park system or park service. So I see it separate. So how could we lump these all together? Thanks.
Thanks. I'm wondering, Director Cote, if we want to maybe put a pin in this one temporarily and go to the next one, because I think they're kind of connected. If that's okay.
Yeah, we can, but quickly, I would like to answer that question for you. So this is proposed to be 100% grant funded. So we've found grant funding for this. And you're not wrong. Sprout Lakes is leading the charge on all of its asset data info. So that's great, but not all of our other parks are at the same place. And we figure doing it all together is just cost effective because we can. And again, because it's grant funded, we don't have to divvy it out based on service.
Sorry, when I was first elected, Bob Harper, the administrator, said, this envelope has got this money in it. This money's got this money in it. You can't do this with the money. So I'm just, in my mind, it's separate. And even though it's a grant, I'm just having a hard time doling it out that way. Thanks.
Yeah. Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, just for the purpose of the discussion, we don't want to get into the nitty gritty. From the financial end, I will be having to figure out what percentage of time this contractor is going to do in each. But until we kind of determine if you guys are even interested in this project, we're not going to go to that depth to figure out, like, we think 10% of the time is going to be in Bamfield and 15% is going to be here. In the end, there'll be a flow through of revenue and expense in whatever service the bulk of the work goes through. Sprout Lake probably will be less. Is that work on a platform that can be, or a layer, I think they call them, that is going to be on that same component? No, maybe not. So maybe there is some minimal work that needs to be done with the already existing Sprout Lake information so that all the parks data is on one layer. Am I using the right term? Layer in the GIS model.
Thank you. So that boils down to staff time. And if there's no staff time being directed to my area because all of that work is completed, realizing that it's a grant, but it's still staff time that is being taken up by all other areas. So I'm just identifying that. Thanks.
No, that's fair. You need to show that you're considering the balance there. So with that, then, since it is grant funded, do we just want to cover this one off and then go to the next one? Dr. Roth, go ahead. Yeah.
I would like to make the motion.
Moved by Dr. Roth. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Haggard. Any further comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Last question. This is a one-time fee, not annually redoing and looking at the same thing over and over again. Perfect. Let's go.
Okay. Any further comments? We have to find a shorthand for that, just so I can just go into the briefing notes. Yeah. Okay. And yeah. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried. Thank you. Okay, well, that's simple enough. Jenny, the next one is Regional Parks Working Group Implementation.
Thank you. Yes. So based on like we just developed the Log Train Trail Management Plan, and as part of that, one of the things that was highlighted was the opportunity to create a regional parks public working group. This is an excellent opportunity because it could increase public and volunteer involvement to guide priorities, initiatives, continue to support the regional's strategy and objective to have more public engagement and involvement, retaining volunteers. There's a lot of positives involved in this initiative, and we did tell the board that we would come back with what that would look like. And so in this pick, we've sort of assessed how much time we think that will be. Especially up front, we do see a lot of hours to establish that meeting and to host the committee meetings, take the input from the community and from the public and work with that. So we're estimating about 100 hours of staff time. And in order to continue with our other work plan items, we would be looking to probably have our lands and resource coordinator lead that, but we're going to have to backfill some of his time with auxiliary hours so that we can continue with our work plan. The net effect we're estimating is about $6,500 in regional parks. So that would be it's in that service, so it has an impact on taxation. So we definitely wanted to bring this back as a proposed initiative case for consideration. Although it is a small amount, it has a large value. There are a lot of other considerations that the board may want to undertake. Thanks.
It's an age-old conversation too. I remember talking about this in 2012. Any further comments? Not this specifically, but regional parks in general. Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We've been operating without this for many years. What has changed? I know this is coming from one of the other directors on wanting this, but I'm just trying to understand what's the motivation for this, and just create another committee that'll meet once every quarter. Thank you.
This really was a resolution that was passed as we adopted the Log Train Trail. And like I said, there are definitely benefits to it, but there is a cost. The status quo currently is that we don't have a formal way of engaging with the public, especially talking about strategies and priorities. We do have ongoing discussions with all of our volunteers and we're trying to work with those, but it is very much ad hoc as necessary. We do plans like the Log Train Trail, where we do massive public engagement and we get opinions on that specific park and what we want to do. And we have more park plans on the docket. So that is one way that we will continue to engage with the public. And even with the Log Train Trail, the other next step for that one, which is developing a transition plan, but that's very focused. So this idea would be to have a more general working group that, again, would help sort of to talk about more general regional park issues.
Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. The community has asked multiple times to have the Parks Committee resurrected. And I think that this is gives them an opportunity to actually formalize that connection with the regional district. I don't believe that it would even need a quarterly meeting, maybe annually or semi-annually, just to formalize the concerns of the community. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Cote. Any further comments? All right, next steps. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Haggard. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Please raise your hand. All those in favor? Okay. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. Next up is regional and rural planning satellite imagery. Ooh, let's see. Dr. Erkin. I told you I was going to do it.
Thanks. So this is, I guess in the past, the ACRD has acquired aerial photography, and it's been flown, either through aircraft, more recently drone, and it's a lot more expensive than what's proposed. In addition, we had acquired LiDAR in the past, so no longer require LiDAR because that is available through the province for the entire province. There's an opportunity to 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 use satellite imagery to provide up-to-date imagery. This would be made available on our public web portal as well. It will certainly aid the planning that we're going to be doing and talking about this afternoon, as well as development applications and parks plans, etc. I think that was basically the coverage for it, and I'll stop there because I'm short on time.
Any comments or questions? Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. We had a town hall on the weekend and we talked about this, and everyone is very concerned this will be used for spying on residents by law enforcement. Things like this, getting data, measuring buildings that magically appeared, and things, what do you want to say? Active enforcement as opposed to complaint driven. So people are very concerned about this, and unanimously, everyone there was opposed to it. The reason is more detailed imagery will be used to measure buildings from the sky, make active enforcement versus complaint-driven bylaw complaints. Nobody was interested in getting it. We currently use Google Earth on a regular basis for all of the imagery that we're doing. You can go back over time and see what things change, and that's been done multiple times. Seeing as how we now have access to LiDAR, it'd be good to see if the public can actually get access to that as well. Is this required? Can we do something else? Do we need to do this every 4 years? So there's a lot of money, and the public's concerned that they don't want it, and very concerned about it. Thank you.
So I think I'll quickly address the bylaw enforcement component first, if that's all right. In that the board sets the direction on how bylaw enforcement proceeds. So currently it's complaint driven, where there are hazard conditions or threat to people with regard to buildings, and ACRD becomes aware of that. We will, we take enforcement, but that's again board direction. The only exception has been around short-term vacation rentals. The policy is that the ACRD is actively, within the time frame we have, actively monitoring short-term vacation rentals and providing people the opportunity to make an application. So, with regard to the enforcement and how this is used, it can be, but the board sets the direction on how we enforce. And so if, hypothetically, if there's a situation where we use the satellite imagery and we become aware of something that is, a potential enforcement issue and it's outside of the scope of the current bylaw enforcement policy, the staff would need to come back to the board to get direction on what to do. So, and that bylaw enforcement policy is set by the board. It can be reviewed and updated as determined by the board. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great. Dr. Cote, I think you were first, and then Dr. Roth.
Thank you. With all due respect to directors, I can't support illegal activity in any manner. That being said, I don't really feel like I want to support this because Google Earth is available at all times. I don't know how accurate it is and update, but my husband uses it all the time, and we've spent so much money on LiDAR and whatever else, and maybe the province will come forward and be able to provide this in the very near future as well. Thank you.
On the LiDAR matter, I think we got their data files from the province when Huet got LiDAR data, but that was from forestry, might be separate.
We partnered with other, with forestry and whatever else in the past, so we didn't have to bear the full cost. Thanks.
Thanks. Dr. Roth?
I'm just curious to know if GIS mapping is derived from satellite imagery. What's the connection?
You can make it a layer. Yeah. Any further comments or questions? Dr. Haggard?
Sorry, I'm not very technology inclined, but what is the preference over this over Google Earth? What's the difference?
So there's parts or significant parts in the regional district of Google Earth that uses our 2012 satellite or air photography. So Google isn't necessarily using others. When you go to Google Earth, you could look, say, along the city of Port Alberni boundary and the ACRD boundary, and you will see significant changes. And when you look at the time frame, you will notice the time frames of when that imagery is there. So they piggyback on publicly available air photography.
Yeah, like my house doesn't have a fence. Stuff like that. Director Cote?
Thank you. Would the real estate board not be updating their files as well? Like on BC assessment? Thanks.
Assessment's definitely all desktop stuff. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, often they will utilize ours, and I guess from the cost perspective, we have a vast region. We are doing planning work, throughout the region. So just for example, within a development application, if we can go and utilize, up to date aerial imagery, we don't have to travel into like West Sound or down past Banfield to do some of the assessments. And then with the type and resolution, it can be then included as a layer and utilized within our other property boundary information, as well as we were just talking about the asset management and trails, etc.
Thanks. So an alternative option would be to put $10,000 in the budget and do each area kind of differently. And maybe that could be done with our OCPs as we do the updates. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Cote. Dr. Roth?
I was just looking at the alternate option to maintain a $10,000 capital budget and seek out partners each year for imagery collection or purchase own small areas each year. Perhaps I can make that motion.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just getting to it. Yeah, there it is. Okay, do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second it, but I'd like to link it to the OCPs. Thank you.
Dr. Roth, is that amenable? Okay, so that can be the main motion. We want to go through the rigmarole amendment. Okay, any further comments? Dr. Boyko?
Thank you. Just to add to what Mike was saying there, I've just been through Google Earth on all Beaufort, and it's all updated within the last year, including, like, I can tell what I changed in my place, and I can tell when the pictures were taken within a week or two, right? So I think it's being updated. You can zoom in and see anything you want to see within less than 1 meter resolution. So adding extra capability, I don't think is required at this point. Thank you.
Thanks. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Okay, next up is Alberni Valley Waste Management, Banfield Waste Hauling Solution. Jen.
Thank you. We actually took this to the inaugural meeting of the Banfield Services Committee last night, which was lovely. And we discussed this. We are seeing continued increases in hauling costs for Banfield for a number of reasons. The last year when we went out for RFP, we didn't have any bids, and so we negotiated with our existing hauling contractor and saw a 21% increase in cost. So when we investigated why this was, that we didn't have local haulers bidding, we realized that it was the bins are holding up the smaller contractors from putting in a bid. So we would like to recommend that we actually go into our reserves, we buy the bins, we maintain them, and we anticipate a significant savings in our annual hauling costs. The committee did pass a resolution that will come to the board, but this was also listed as a pick.
So buying smaller bins so that more groups can haul them, is that the idea?
Actually, the current hauler owns the bins. So, and that's one of the benefits, being a large hauler, they can manage that inventory. Smaller haulers don't have a lot of bins, and it's a big investment for them to buy bins to take over the contract.
Okay, thank you. I totally misheard you, so that's fine. Okay. Dr. Beckett, go ahead.
Thank you. We did have good discussion last night at the committee, and as Jenny identified, we were unanimous in our support. The other thing that we did talk about, you know, I know that in previous boards we've talked about social procurement policy. One of the things that I've thought was extremely beneficial was the fact that by procuring these bins would allow firms regionally, including Port Alberni, to be in a position to bid hopefully successfully. So, you know, keeping these opportunities local as opposed to Nanaimo or Parksville. So I certainly would advocate for this and look for the board to give our community support on this matter. Thank you.
So would you like to move the motion?
I would like to move the motion. Thank you very kindly.
All right, thank you. Are there seconders? Thank you, Director Haggard. Any further comments? Did you have one, Director Boyko?
Yes, I get Chair. Just a quick question about the bids for the bins. I know they're very hard to find on the island. Are you sourcing them off the island? And I think prices through the roof on these right now. Thank you.
We did some preliminary investigation. Procurement of everything is challenging. I think the pricing will stay the same. It's just a matter of time. So we're hoping if we can get approval to put our order in sooner than later, and then we sit and wait. They will be manufactured on the island.
Thank you for that. Director Cote and then Director Coots.
Thank you. Just a question. How old are these bins? Because I don't believe they're very old.
The current bins are owned by Waste Management, our current hauler. The new bins that we'll be buying will be brand new.
Do you know how old the Waste Management ones are?
Well, I think they got them from Suncoast when they originally bought out Suncoast. Some of the bins they've swapped out with their own inventory from Nanaimo. There's some that are old, and we've been, you know, bear proofing and doing a number of upgrades. But it is a bit of a mixed bag out there right now.
Thank you. Any further comments? Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. As I'm recalling, just some clarification on, did we purchased a bunch of bins, I thought, or like Beaver Creek and I thought Banfield at the same time. Does the regional district own any of these bins? Thank you.
There's a few recent purchases. So we've done the curbside 3-stream bins. Those are bins. When we did the landfill extension there, we had 30-yard bins. The bins that we're talking about right now are 6-yard bins. So they're like the commercial size bins, like the ones you see around town for cardboard. I can't think of anywhere, or besides at the landfill, we have like a couple one-offs at the landfills, but we don't have any listing of 6-yard bins.
I don't understand why you go to smaller bins when it needs more frequent pickups.
Sorry for the confusion. These will be exactly the same size that are already in Banfield, but we're just buying them so that we own them instead of the contractor. Right now, there's 8 6-yard bins at the transfer station, and then there's a number of bins that are located throughout the community in different locations.
Thank you. Director Coots.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment on one of the questions and answers that we had received at the committee last night in regards to this, especially with everyone with being budget-minded. Pardon me. With the money saved after initial purchasing of these, it would take only about 3.5 years for the money that was spent to be remade back again. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for that. Any further comments? That better be the briefing now. I'm joking. Okay, and seeing no other comments, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Director Cote.
Sorry, one more question. Do we pay rental on these bins now?
Essentially, the contract that we have is an all-in price. So the rental is wrapped into that very expensive service fee that we pay, right? Because they provide the bins, they tip the bins. And so it's an all-in price, rent and service.
Thank you for that. And going once, going twice. Okay. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Director Beckett. I just saw it now. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I was a little late getting in there. You know, further to what Director Coots had said following the meeting, in 3 years, will be in a position to lessen the contract fee. So it's actually a savings to Banfield and to the region. And I also wanted to mention that some of the existing refuse containers now in Banfield are in terrible shape. It's hard to lift the lids up. I don't know how some elderly folks are able to do that. So mass improvement and a cost savings in just over 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, that's the last comment. Dave, do you have a comment?
Yeah.
Similar conversation we've had at our holdings and economic development committee meetings, because there are a lot of costs and charges that we've been seeing that concur all the time. And so kind of in favor of this, but when we were thinking of purchasing them and their handling of them and the wear and tear and stuff like that, just thinking how long do they last for? And is there, like, when they are doing handling of them, we ran into some complications, so we haven't confirmed that purchase yet. So is that
For Euclid?
yeah, for our resorts, because we have a lot of services that we pay for that they're thinking, okay, well, we can probably invest in these and save some money in the long run, and the return is 3 years, but the bins have the lifespan of
I think the lifespan is 10 to 15 years. It's low for an asset because they do get so much wear and tear. But still, again, I think, we have payoff within 3 years, and if they can last 10 to 15. And also just the weather conditions because they're metal bins, right? So making sure that you keep them painted so they don't rust away.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay.
Who pays for this?
Excellent questions, guys. I love garbage. So this is the Alberni Valley and Banfield Service Committee. And so this is coming out of our reserve account. So it is coming out of the reserve, so it isn't direct taxation, but we will be paying back into the reserve as we refund this. And then obviously as we do amortization.
Thank you. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. That's very lively. Okay, next up is landfill gas monitoring. Jenny, please go ahead.
Okay, no worries, guys. We get to talk more about garbage. So landfill gas monitoring. We had started a pilot project with VIU and did a lot of monitoring of the landfill, which was excellent. We got some really good data. As we all know, with organics going into the landfill, it creates landfill gas. And if we're over our threshold, we're going to have to invest in massive infrastructure. So part of that project was to really find out, like right now we use a theoretical model, but we wanted to get some real data. We ran that for 2 years. We do not need to proceed, but we have invested with we have a great working partnership with VIU to begin with. They have the equipment to come and continue monitoring. We also have some on-site monitoring devices that we put in, the kind of static monitoring, but you need to have that ongoing dynamic monitoring to sort of see like how is that tracking. So there's supposed to be indicators. So we've looked at actually creating this as a permanent ongoing cost, but it is about $20,000. It is not legislatively required. It is excellent data to have. So it's we can do, not a we have to do, which is why we've brought it to the board as a pick, and I'm happy to answer any question.
Dr. Boyko.
Thank you. At this time, with everything else going up, and I don't know what our total proposed tax increase is, having needs versus wants very important. We just raised the tipping fees from $3 a bag to $5 a bag. A month ago, that got implemented. That's a 67% increase. I know a lot more bags are getting burned and thrown in the bush now because of that. I would hate to see that increase more when we increase tipping fees once again, and we just did it a month ago. Thank you.
Thanks. Any further comments? Okay, any activities? Motions? Director Haggard?
I'd like to make the motion.
Thank you.
I move that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 16 Alberni Valley and Banfield Waste Management landfill gas monitoring post Vancouver Island University in the 2024 to 2028 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Beckett. Any further comments? Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there is monitoring that we have to do. If that's the same type of work that the VIU students are doing. Thank you.
So our current required monitoring is all happening. This is additional, it's proactive, it is measuring landfill gas and is valuable data, but it is not required. So we are absolutely covered off on all of our mandatory monitoring already.
Sorry, I thought we were already monitoring that on an ongoing basis. And because we've added extra wells around to make sure that the leachate wasn't going anywhere. And I thought part of that was monitoring the gas, because we seem to have had that information in the past. It was collected. If we're not ongoing monitoring, how often does it have to be monitored? Thank you.
Yes, and we do extensive leachate monitoring, always have, and that is very highly regulated. The leachate and the landfill gas monitoring, though, is typically done under a theoretical model, partly because the technology wasn't very good until recently. And even now, like we're using cutting edge technology with VIU to try to get real-time monitoring of landfill gas production. In the last 2 years, when we did have that, that did get brought to the board on what the gas production was. Yeah, but with the leachate, we will continue to establish that monitoring program.
I thought we were having a burn also, not what, like a chimney, yeah, methane burn that was going to be in place. Thanks.
Correct. We have one hotspot on the landfill where, because of the leachate collection system, the gas is it just happens to use the system. It's not designed for it, but it is floating in through the leachate collection system, and we're finding one hotspot. So we are still working to install a flare, which will just burn off that.
Sorry. So it seems to me that we're sort of on top of things right now. And I think that we had an expectation of how long it would take before we got into any trouble. And I'm recalling that it's a few years down the road. So I'm not really seeing that we need to do this right now, maybe in a couple of years, but I don't think we really need it right now. Thanks.
Thank you. I had a question in regards to this whole thing. I thought some of our monitoring was not based on equipment monitoring, but just like desktop formulas. Is that how it works? Could you go into a bit of detail with that?
We have a requirement to report on our landfill gas production, and the province definitely, absolutely accepts desktop models. So it's basically a theoretical model based on how much and what type of garbage we put into the ground. We assume what it is producing. So we'll continue to do that and do our reporting every 5 years. But the real-time on the ground monitoring is sort of above and beyond that, because the theoretical model is probably not accurate, but until the technology improves and either the province or the feds decide that they regulate and require us to do that, it's not required. This is progress.
Thanks. And we'll see how things change into the future. Vida, I saw that you turned your video on. Did you have a comment? No? Okay. Okay, so with that, the motion has been moved. Are all those in favor? All opposed? Okay. All right, motion defeated. That's the word. I'm wondering if we can skip this one because Director McEwen had a comment on Veraware. She's for it, or is this something we should wait for her to speak on, or she probably wouldn't mind if it just moved forward? Nobody? The bear stuff. Jenny, do you want to introduce it? She might come in.
Yeah, why don't we postpone this to the West Coast Committee, because it's very West Coast.
Okay. Next item is the Sprout Lake Community Parks Favor Trail design.
Excellent. So this is a priority for the Parks Commission. The Sprout Lakes Parks Commission is to continue development of the trail network out in Sprout Lake. And so typically what we've done is we've done design and then worked on trail expansion. What we are proposing is in 2024 about $20,000 to move forward with the next portion of the trail. The next phase will basically be a conceptual design and doing discussions with impacted landowners. And it's expected that construction will then happen in 2025.
Thank you. Director Cote?
Thank you. I'm not sure why this is at this point in the budget, and why it's not just in the Sprout Lake Parks budget.
Well, this is definitely in line with what we've always done, but we did want to make sure that we were highlighting anything that was a nice to do, not a have to do. And this isn't a have to do. We can always defer and work on other priorities. So we're happy if you're supporting it, but we did want to raise it as an option. And it does only affect Sprout Lake, of course, because it's within your service area.
Yeah, I don't recall pulling pieces out like this. Seeing as how really Sprout Lake is not having to do any of the asset management part, definitely want to be, and recognizing at that point that staff would be directed in a different area to work. I would definitely want to have Sprout Lake Parks covered. So I'd like to make the motion to support this.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Haggard. Dr. Boyko?
Just a quick clarifying question here. So in the first page 10, you say it's funding is coming from reserve funding. Is that not correct? It's coming from Sprout Lake reserve funding directly, not everybody? Not a problem. Just clarifying.
There, besides general government service, there is no such thing as one reserve for everything. Anytime I say reserve funding, it's still specific to the service that is referenced on that pick. So the only ones that kind of got complicated are the asset management one, because we haven't determined what percentage is going to what service, and same with the capital project manager. We haven't done that work to figure out what percentage is where, but whenever it says reserve funding, each service has its own, well, if it has assets, each service has its own reserve.
Thank you. Any further comments? Director Sparrow?
Thank you. This is a general comment just on this. Can we ask this picks in the future, you put down exactly where the reserve funding is coming from, so people out there know it's coming from, like Sprout Lake or Cherry Creek or all the above kind of deal, because sometimes people get confused and it says it comes out of reserve funding. They assume it means general funding, and then they get a little uppity sometimes on social media.
Yeah. That makes me want to go back to the infographic videos, but we won't. There's a dearth of lack of understanding about how the Confederation of Regional District work, but that's another conversation. So with that in mind, unless there are any other comments, all those in favor? I'm only counting Penny's vote. I'm not. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, Charlie, thank you for sitting through the entire meeting for your one item. Please go ahead.
Yeah, with this pick, Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department is proposing installing a 4,500 liter fuel tank at Fire Hall number 3, the Harold Bishop Hall. This will provide them operational fuel year round. And in the event of a road closure, such as we had last year, or the Somas Bridge going out, they would have emergency supply on site. The costs we're looking at is around $20,000, including the hookup and fleet installation.
So I had a question about this that may be remedial. Is this just one of those big tanks that's on a rack next to the hall or something like that?
Yeah, basically be a self-contained tank with spill containment and all that stuff built into it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Cote and then Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. Once again, I'm seeing that this should be in the Sprout Lake Fire Department budget and not to the whole board. So really stipulating also that Sprout Lake is the only one paying for this again. And I support this, so I'd like to make the motion.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Haggard. And Dr. Sparrow?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll support this too, because I know with going through emergencies, we've had them in the valley here. And operationally, I had a time where we were getting low on fuel and there's very few gas stations left open that had gen sets. So we pulled in to get our fuel, being emergency responders. And the response we got from the community at large that were front of the pumps was not exactly welcoming. And we were told to go back in line with the rest of them, even though you think you'd be able to go into the pumps first because you are the fire truck and you need to go out again. It wasn't communicated that way to us at that time. So we deferred and we drove away and told those people we could no longer be in service because we're running out of fuel and we had to find a secondary source. So I support this because not only is that Sprout Lake, but yes, when the time's emergency, they don't really agree. So.
Excellent points. Thank you. Any further comments, Dr. Blicka?
You kind of asked a question I was going to ask there. If Sprout Lake wants this and they want to pay for it, are they going to share it with the other fire departments? Like we have shared agreements. If I'm clarifying to make sure that this is going to afford, and secondly, if we're going to do this in one area, should we maybe have one in another area? Like,
that's another excellent question too, Charlie. Sounds like we should potentially have this as a part of strategic conversations. Go ahead.
I think from Sprout Lake's perspective, they're slightly isolated because they have the one crossing of the river there. So they've found themselves in a situation with road closures through flooding that there's nothing available. Closer to town, there's more options for the other departments, but certainly even Beaver Creek has a small supply of diesel fuel that they keep on hand with their gen sets. So it's something that all the departments do look at.
And will Sprout Lake pay for that? Or?
Sprout Lake pays for that, yes. Of course. I just want to say that the fire departments have automatic aid and the resources are shared. So I'm sure that the gas would also be shared. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Dr. Sparrow, go ahead.
Just for clarification, yes, on emergencies, we do lean on each other and find ways to make things work. But there is that break between Sprout Lake and because of the bridge, yes, it doesn't work in town.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of this section. Do we have to have like a blanket motion to accept everything? No, we went through each thing separately, so it should be okay. So that brings us to reports, of which there are none. Late business, which there isn't any. Question periods.
I've received no questions from the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Dr. Roth, Dr. Boyko. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you.
Go.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
5 minutes. See everyone in 6 minutes. I'm gonna go stretch my legs.